Ayubowan, and welcome to you all to the 4th Research Symposium of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka, under the theme Embracing the Changing Role of HRM. Let us now commence this event with the National Anthem, followed by the CIPM Anthem. Sri Lanka Mata, Sri Lanka, Namo, 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 Namo Mata. Sundari Gairi, Surati Ati Sobramanya Lanka. Tanya Tanya Nikamayu Pagatu Piri Jaya Bhumi Lanka. Masuk Sankasi Siddha Sadhana, Jivanaye Mata. Tirikatu Gana Kalam Puja, Namo Namo Mata. Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata. Ubaya Palinga, Ubaya Pasatya, Ubaya Pashakti, Apahadatulevanti, Upahaloke, Apage Anuprani, Upajivanale. Mukti Rombare, Abhijivadadini, Titina Apakukudukaran Mata. Nyanavira Vadavamina Raginayanu Natachaya Bhumikara. Ikamavathagidarum Kalabhavina, Yamu Yamu Vinukama. Namo Namo Mata. Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata. Jayawardana, Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. While recalling that last year's research symposium was held at the BMICH Colombo, it is rather a proud moment for us that this year's will be the first virtual symposium organized by the CIPM Colombo. The CIPM Research Symposium is a forum to all researchers to showcase their HR research skills through applied social research based on recent findings. These research publications are therefore vital for HR management practitioners, scholars, and students. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Chandana Jayawardena, the symposium chair. Dr. Jayawardena is the chair of the research committee of the CIPM Sri Lanka. He is the head of the Department of Agricultural Extension, University of Peradeniya. Dr. Jayawardena has nearly 10 years of managerial exposure in the corporate sector. He obtained a bachelor's degree of agriculture from the University of Peradeniya, a master's in business administration from the University of Colombo, National Diploma in Human Resources Management from CIPM Sri Lanka, postgraduate diploma in marketing from the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK, and PhD from Thomas Bata University in Zlin. Dr. Jayawardena is also an attorney at law in the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. Dr. Jayawardena is the president of Sri Lanka Apparel Exporters Association, chair of the Applied Research Committee of CIPM, chairperson of the Board of Study in Agricultural Extension, and a member of the Board of Management of the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. He has published and presented in many local and international forums and has won international awards. Dr. Jayawardena has served as a guest speaker and has chaired research and academic forums locally and internationally. He also serves as a visiting scholar of the Edith Cowan University, Australia, and Thomas Bata University in Zlin. I now invite Dr. Jayawardena to welcome this gathering and to give an overview of the symposium.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Ananda Jayawardana, the chief guest and the keynote speaker of the symposium, Mr. Jayant Amarasinghe, President of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka, the council members, past presidents, corporate members, distinguished scholars and practitioners who are attending, joining us online, university students, CIPM students, friends and well-wishers, and most importantly, the staff members of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome all of you to the fourth symposium, fourth HR Research Symposium of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka. Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, as the leader in human resource management, has identified the importance of developing a research culture and to provide support, encouragement, and to facilitate the dissemination of research findings through annual research symposiums and also through compilation of research publications. Through sharing of research and through encouraging our stakeholders to get involved in formulating this research, the purpose of the Institute has been to make a compilation of things and to make them accessible, transparent, lucid, and defendable so that it will contribute to add value to the stakeholders of CIPM and stakeholders of the HRM discipline. As a symposium chair, in 2019, I was involved in redesigning the research symposium to an advanced level, where we had a lot of collaborations with not only with our members, but also with other HR practitioners, industry, universities, and also CIPM students. And we developed a forum and had a very successful research symposium in July 2019 at BMICH. This year, we had planned to have our research symposium on 25th of March 2020. But due to the unforeseen situation of COVID, we had to postpone it. And we took it as a challenge to introduce another first, that is to introduce the first ever HR symposium of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. I welcome all of you sincerely for this event, and we believe that this initiative will add another dimension and a lot of value addition to the stakeholders of CIP. As a symposium chair, let me give you a brief overview of the symposium. After the inauguration session, where we will also listen to a very insightful keynote address by our chief guest, we will be moving into technical sessions. Now, in the new normal, in the online conference, we will be having 3 parallel sessions operating at 3 digital platforms at the same time. So from just after the conclusion of the inauguration session till 2:30 today, we will be deliberating on these 3 concurrent sessions. And these sessions we have identified as HR practitioners and CIPM members, which will be online through this webinar platform, and in 2 other platforms where we have shared the online links. We will be sharing the research presentations of CIPM students and university community. It is also encouraging to note that even with so much of limitations, we are having over 30 presenters and 30 presentations which will be shared through this online symposium. Also, we are very glad to say that we have compiled the HR Perspectives, the journal of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, and just after this symposium, we will be publishing that. And you can also see the previous publications of HRM Perspectives already available in digital mode online. Now, with all these initiatives, we are very exciting, and we believe all the efforts that we are taking to give opportunity to our stakeholders and thereby addition of value to the HRM discipline will serve in the best interest of our community, and it will add value to the legacy of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka. With best wishes for a very insightful and interesting symposium, I warmly thank all of you for your support and your encouragement. And once again, I welcome you to be with us throughout. And also, you will have a very important panel discussion, which will be online from 3 to 4:30 p.m. today, with the participation of industry experts, 5 industry experts sharing different disciplines and different industries, and they will focus on practical examples of HR strategies and practices. So I invite you to participate, to engage, to enthuse, and to deliberate throughout this symposium, and hope this will be a memorable event for you. Thank you.
Dr. Jayawardena, for for providing directions to this symposium and for putting so much of commitment and dedication to bring the symposium to such a big level. I kindly invite Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe, the President of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe is the Deputy General Manager, Human Resources at Ceylon Bank and counts over 27 years of experience in the field of human resources management, change management, and business process re-engineering, and has held key leadership positions in HR at leading local and international organizations during his illustrious career. He is an attorney at law by profession and holds a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Colombo and a master's in business administration from the Buckinghamshire New University, UK. He is a postgraduate diploma holder in management from Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing and holds the National Diploma in Human Resources Management from Institute of Personnel Management. He also holds a postgraduate diploma in international relations from the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. I now invite you, sir, to address the gathering.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Chandana, for comprehensive deliberations on this total symposium, and it has given us very large information how it is going to be. Our keynote speaker, Professor Ananda Jayawardena, former Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor, University of Moratuwa, immediate past President, Mr. Dhamika Fernando, Council members, Chairman of Research Committee, Dr. Chandana, University of Peradeniya, presenters of all categories, HR professionals, members of CIPM, faculty members, students, staff members, and all participants. On behalf of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, I would like to recognize and appreciate all the participants and resource personnels and everyone to this virtual research symposium on the theme of embracing the changing role of HRM. Having assumed duties as the new president of CIPM, it is my pleasure to address you at this significant event organized by Dr. Chandana as the chairman of Applied Research Center at CIPM. This event, organized by Standing Committee on Applied Research and HR Publications, HR Symposium and HR Publications are among most important events of CIPM calendar. Look forward by many HR professionals throughout the island. CIPM, as the nation's leader of human resource management, we are proud to present to you this first ever online research symposium. This is the fourth consecutive research symposium conducted by CIPM. Two symposiums, I think last year and this year, organized by our eminent personality, Dr. Chandana, who is heading this unit. We have been placing greater emphasis every year in the areas of research, bringing many benefits to the stakeholders and the members in general, and also the HR fraternity. This year's theme, you have seen, embracing the changing role of HRM, focuses on the effectiveness of HRM practices in private, public, and NGOs sector organizations. Adding colors to CIPM's fourth research symposium, the keynote address will be delivered by former Vice Chancellor, as I mentioned, the Senior Professor of the University of Moratuwa, Professor Ananda. CIPM Annual Research Symposium creates a unique forum for HR practitioners, researchers, faculty members, and students to present their intellectual contributions and to recognize pragmatic findings. This also creates an ideal platform for the HRM fraternity to interact and network and find out what are the priorities in terms of making this research segment in this country. During the past year, the initiatives and activities of Applied Research Committee, led by our able chairman, Dr. Chandana, aiming at establishing a research culture at CIPM, and also going forward to go and establish this culture in this country. That has been recognized by the membership. This committee provided opportunities to the members to improve their research activities through workshops, local and international webinars, applied research studies, HR publications, and HR symposium, etc. Research symposium is a vital activity of the committee. The CIPM Research Symposium is organized to disseminate research and development findings in relation to creative innovations in human resource management and related areas for the benefit of students, academia, researchers, and industrialists, government and non-government officials, and the public. Further, the Research Symposium aims to carry out an annual collations of publications, making them accessible, transparent, and defendable to the participants. Efforts of Dr. Chandana, I mainly recognize this as a symposium chair of CIPM Research Symposium 2020, has to be appreciated, and he has received the support of the research committee members where we have appointed. Contributions of members of this committee, namely Lydia and Dr. Jayanta Pathiratna, Colonel Saman Jayawardena, and Mr. Tharindu Gurutilaka, and all the CIPM staff in this Applied Research Center contributed a lot. They have to be appreciated. I truly recognize their contribution. This symposium was formally scheduled, as he mentioned, to be held on March 25th of 2020. As you all know, had to be postponed due to this COVID-19. Not only this event, but also we had postponed many events which was scheduled to be held by the CIPM. This is a novel and scholarly event among local and international online research conferences. Professor Ananda Jayawardena, chief guest of the symposium, eminent HR practitioners and presenters of research papers are sharing insight at CIPM Research Symposium. Today's presenters will represent the manufacturing, banking, and finance, telecommunications, and travel industries. They will be making their discussions and presentations on their research findings. These deliberations will undoubtedly provide new insight to HR professionals and students to further their knowledge of HR practices relevant to these industries. They will encourage HR professionals to make research-based decisions, because those decisions will be able to deliver. Research is creating a new knowledge. The success of many businesses depend on the amount of investment they make on research. If you take some countries in the world, they are spending 20 to 30% of their allocated investment for research. Because some of the companies, if you take like Toyota, the research and development unit itself is having 250, 300 employees. So they believe the importance of research and development. I'm appealing and requesting Dr. Chandana, without limiting your intervention for CIPM membership and the students and fraternity, let's take this your energy to the country level, because this country needs very important intervention and large-scale intervention to analyze our HR priorities, and doing researchers will be able to find out what exactly we can deliver to this market and uplift the human capital management. So Make-on Research is at this CIPM, we just concluded our annual general meeting, and we have categorically mentioned that we are going to take over few national level research, and we are in the process of identifying key critical areas where we can invite all the professionals with the involvement of our chair, Dr. Chandana, to take forward and analyze the HR, people management issues in this country, not only taking the face value, but also analyzing, comprehensive research and come up with the solid findings to tell the government, tell the authorities. So this is exactly that we need to address. Without doing proper analysis, whatever the decisions will not going to help the bottom line. So I'm taking this opportunity to invite the committee and the CIPM members and the students and the faculty members. Let us get together and focus this research element in this country, not only at the CIPM level, which is highly important for our country. So having said that, before concluding my speech, I would like to quote from Bill Gates on research. You can see how he has been believing the research. I believe in innovation, and that the way you get the innovation is you fund research. And you learn the basic fact, Bill Gates. I wish everyone in this who got involved in this research symposium as participants and faculty members, resource personnel, and everybody who got involved. This first ever online research symposium is organized by CIPM Sri Lanka Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. This is online research, and once again I recognize the work and the contribution done by Dr. Chandana and in his committee at CIPM. Having said that, I wish you all the very best and good luck. Enjoy the day at Symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amarasinghe, for your words of leadership. I believe your words of motivation will help us take this to greater heights. Now, we have the privilege of having Professor Ananda Jayawardena as the chief guest and keynote speaker of the symposium. Professor Ananda Jayawardena is a senior professor in civil engineering at the University of Moratuwa. He is also the immediate past Vice Chancellor of the University of Moratuwa and past Director General of the National Science Foundation. He obtained a BSc Engineering degree in Civil Engineering with first-class honors from the University of Moratuwa in December 1983, a Master of Science degree and PhD from the Loughborough University of Technology in the UK. He is a chartered engineer, an international professional engineer, a fellow of the Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka, a fellow of the Institute of Project Managers Sri Lanka, a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka, a life member of Sri Lanka Association of Advancement of Science, a graduate member of the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors, and a member of the Society of Structural Engineers, Sri Lanka. He is also the past NDB Bank Endowed Professor in Entrepreneurship at the University of Moratuwa and a past president of the Institute of Engineers, Sri Lanka. He has also served as a member of the governing councils of the National Institute of Education, Institute of Construction Training and Development, State Engineering Corporation, Postgraduate Institute of Management, Miloda Academy of Financial Studies, Sir Arthur C. Clarke Institute of Modern Technologies, National Science Foundation, the Open University of Sri Lanka, and Construction Industry Development Authority. Currently, he is also a member of the Board of Management of the Engineering Council of Sri Lanka and a non-executive board member of the Commercial Bank PLC and Sierra Cables PLC. He has served in several other national committees in science and technology and education policy making. He is a recipient of several awards, including the National Achievers Award in 2013 under the category of Engineering by Lions Club International, District 306A1, the IESL President's Award in 2012, and the Asia's Education Excellence Award in 2016 for outstanding contribution to education, Sri Lanka. He has also won the Education Leadership Award in 2017 for education leadership, Sri Lanka Education Leadership Award in 2018 for outstanding contribution to education presented by World Education Congress and CMO Asia, and Eminence in Engineering Award, the most prestigious lifetime award given by the IESL for Eminence in Practice of Engineering in 2018. I now invite Professor Jayawardana to address you all.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe, the President of the CIPM, Mr. Dhammika Fernando, the outgoing President, members of the Executive Council, Dr. Chandana Jayawardena, Chair of the Research Committee, members of the CIPM, students of the CIPM and the universities, practicing HR professionals, symposium presenters, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed pleased, honored, and privileged to have been invited as the chief guest of this very important symposium, the fourth symposium of the CIPM, which was originally planned to be held face-to-face, but unfortunately for obvious reasons, we are now having it on Zoom platform. But I'm so happy to see that it actually went through and we are meeting to share the best practices of human resource research. I appreciate the President, the Executive Council, and Dr. Chandana Jayawardena for extending this very kind invitation. I was fascinated to hear the talk by Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe explaining the importance of research and the amount of research that we do carry out in Sri Lanka compared to other countries, the very small investment of about 0.1% of the GDP for both private and state research in Sri Lanka, which is one of the smallest in this part of the world. And with that kind of statistics, to promote research by these kind of professional institutions is excellent. And I am sure Dr. Chandana Jayawardena will provide the necessary leadership to promote research both by the students of the CIPM, the professionals, and the practitioners as well. So with that, today, I was just thinking to address this symposium with an idea with actually relevant to the theme. I would like to share the screen so that probably you can see. Can you see the screen? You can, right. So I was just thinking under the same theme, embracing the changing role of the human resource professionals, just to address the challenges in embracing the new roles of the HRM. And today, of course, I was looking at the kind of presentations that are lined up, both by the professional students. And I was very happy to see the kind of research that both professionals and students do. And as Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe indicated, that we need to really put these research findings into practice. And sometimes we face challenges in trying to put these kind of research findings to the practice, or sometimes we have organizational issues, maybe that we are not really emphasizing on the application of research in our day-to-day activities or in industries and organizations. So with that, I was just thinking to use this topic, challenges in embracing the changing role of HRM. So with that, I was just planning to address this under 4 topics. A very brief note on the evolution of HRM, the changing role of human resource management, the challenges in embracing the changing role, and the possible directions for HRM research. All human resource experts must be knowing the evolution of the HRM practices over the years. As you can see on the screen, it started as a welfare officer in 80s, in 1800, then the labor manager, personnel management, human resource management we are talking about today, and going into the human capital, and to consider HR as a business partner and people-centered HR management. So this is where we are now. And as human resource professionals and experts and students and researchers, I'm sure you are very familiar with these kind of concepts that you are going through. And we know that we consider human resources as the most important asset in our organizations. And we look after, that is why we actually consider human resource management as people-centered. And when I think about the human resources, as it cut across all the professionals, all the functions of the organization, I think human resource professional is the most powerful and influential professional in the organization. It is, you are in fact, a very privileged position in the organization, because you know everybody and you're covering all sectors, every employee from top to bottom in that organization, and you're aware of each and every one of them, and you can significantly influence on them as well. So therefore, I consider HR as the most powerful profession in an organization. These kind of key functions we have been handling in the HR. I'm sure Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe, we in the HR AGM in the Ceylon Bank, and you have been also very familiar with these kind of concepts, all the HR professionals, functions like recruitment, selection, and introduction or induction, personal administration, training and development, performance and reward management, talent management, succession and career planning, labor relations, and HR planning as conventional kind of duties and roles that we need to do. With this, the new roles that we need to embrace as an HR professional certainly include things which we support for the development and the progress and the growth of that organization. This includes that we need to play a role as a strategic partner in the organization in the strategic planning and providing all necessary human resources necessary for the vision, mission, and the activities of the growth of the organization. And then act as an employee advocate and also as a champion for change. So therefore, human resource role is actually transforming the organization to the growth direction. So if you consider this role as a strategic partner, the HR professional should contribute to the development and accomplishment of the organization-wide business plans and objectives. And I'm not very sure to what extent that we are contributing to this. And I know at least on state sectors and organizations that I'm involved in, the contribution by the HR profession in the business plan development or strategy development is not really up to the mark, and we can really contribute to this direction very much as well. Then the HR objectives are established to support this attainment of the overall strategic business plan and objectives. And we should deeply knowledgeable about the design of the workflow systems in which the people succeed and contribute, and looking at the entire organization workflow, whether it is automation, whether we use artificial intelligence in our dealings, or how you best manage the workflow systems, that we need to have a very good idea and contribute. Then when HR is aligned with the business and the personnel management component, it is considered as a strategic contributor to the business success of the organization. So we need to therefore think like the business people, not just the HR manager, but we are the strategic business people. We should know all the peripheral subject areas like finance, marketing, accounting, and we should be accountable and responsible for the cost reduction and the measurement of performance and the processes of the organization. And with that, of course, clearly we should be very business savvy, and we should know what kind of business that we carry out. So therefore, this strategic partnership with the HR, with the management and the rest of the organization impacts all HR services that we carry out, such as the design of work positions, hiring, rewarding, recognition and pay, performance appraisal systems, career and succession planning, and employee development as well. If you move to the employee advocate position, we should have a knowledge about the advocacy of people. We should create a work environment in which people are motivated, contributing, and happy. Of course, these are fundamental functions, but to what extent that we really put our efforts to make sure that we create this kind of an environment to be motivated, contributing, and happy. We need to foster effective methods for goal setting, communication, and empowerment through responsibility and building employee ownership of the organization. And we should help establish the organization culture and climate in which people have their competency, concern, commitment, and commitment to serve all customers well. Now, when we talked about this employer advocacy, we need to provide overall talent management strategies, employee development opportunities, employee assistance programs, profit sharing, organization development interventions, employee complaints and problem solving, and regularly scheduled communication opportunities to make sure that we properly communicate all our important decisions to everybody concerned. With that, we move on to HR role as a change champion. And HR probably has not been really considering that we should act as a change champion in the organization, because people are considered as the most important asset of the organization. So we should really support as a change champion. We need to constantly evaluate of the organization performance in the need of HR professional to campaign the necessary changes. We have to have a knowledge and the ability to execute successful change strategies and make the HR professional exceptionally valued in the organization. We should know how to link change to strategic needs of the organization to minimize employee dissatisfaction and resistance to change. As well, we need to sponsor change in other departments and work practices as well. So with this role as a change champion, we promote the overall success of the organization, and the HR should champion the organizational mission, vision, values, goals, and the actions. And finally, HR should help determine the measures that will tell their organization how well we are doing and how well we are succeeding. We know that today's environment, the management is unlike the historical days that we had the line organization and things like that. We have very agile organizations today, and the millennials, they don't like to have these kind of traditional management, and the attitudes, behaviors, values are different to some extent, and we prosper or we succeed more in agile kind of management than the traditional management. So we need to see how best we as HR professionals practice and move into, or we are ready to embrace this kind of agile management. With that, I would like to move on to the challenges that we face as HR professionals. Although I'm not an HR professional, I deal with people with the experience that I've had in my and our organizations. I think we can probably share some of these, the challenges that we face. The first challenge, I think, is that most people in the organizations have negative perception on the HR function, and it is actually a challenge that we need to overcome. And the HR division is considered as a bastion of a bureaucracy, and it is a policing arm of the management and sometimes the enemy of employees. It talks about more on the administration and personnel management, serves executive agendas well, but viewed as a roadblock or barrier for much of the rest of the organization. HR functions solely serve the needs of the management, they believe, and employee complaints often fell to deaf ears. Sometimes misleading employees, failing to keep the employee information confidential, exhibiting poor practices in areas such as investigations, benefit options, transfer and hiring employees. And we need to actually see to what extent our own HR functions in our organization, that we have a positive mindset, a positive attitude among employees. If you have a negative attitude from the employees, then we have a challenge to overcome because they don't trust us. And this is a great challenge for the human resource department to overcome. So with that, I move on to the understanding industry and business. One of the criticisms that we have heard in many private organizations is that when HR function is actually headed by an HR professional who does not have an industry or aptitude to the business and the industry, he will not be able to certainly contribute to the new roles that we are getting, like being a strategic partner, employee advocate, and to plan your human resource talent, recruit, train, everything it affects. So therefore, we must have a very good idea about the industry within which that we work and the kind of business that our organization carry out, our own industry, and what kind of products and services that we provide. What is the stage of the development of our industry and technology used in practice of our organization? What is the product market combination? What kind of challenges that we have? What are the capabilities of our organization nationally? And what are the competitiveness or challenges that we need to face nationally and internationally? So this kind of an idea on the business and the industry is essential. And if you don't have it, then it is a threat for us. How do we have this kind of knowledge? If you are a HR professional, we need to have our CPD and study about our business and industry and acquire the knowledge of the business of the organization within which that you work. Otherwise, those organizations will hire industry experts or experts of that product or whatever the services as the HR professional and then try to develop HR capabilities as well. So I think we need to take our position that we are the experts of HR. So the additional knowledge that we need to find out the industry and the business, we must work towards that. The next challenge is the managing relationships. The very important aspects in an organization that we need to have a very healthy relationship as we do. Humans, most difficult creature to understand, generally self-centered, sometimes individually and with the unions as well. Talked about collective bargaining, demand increasing benefits and welfare, talked about frequent grievances, doubts about the equitable workforce and lack of communication. And therefore, we need to proactively manage relationships between employees and co-workers, teams, and management. Very important that we do. We need to find out to what extent that we really put our efforts to do that. And for that we need patience. We need obviously very good negotiating skills through understanding of issues and to effectively use the feedback of the organization. And when we get the feedback, we can identify the problems in advance, any kind of issues among the workers in advance, and take necessary actions without letting it go overboard. Then training and development, a very, very important function of the organization. And a criticism that I have heard most of the time is that we do not really plan need-based training for the organization. And the training which is actually required by the CEOs to be given to their employees and their subordinates. And we sometimes carry out just training programs through the training division and the HR division, but they are not really focused to what is required for the success of the organization. So therefore, we need to accurately identify the needs of our training, provision of career development training, CPD courses leading to qualifications, quality of training, provision of training to suit the business and the industry, and we need to benchmark our performance, our training programs with the relevant organizations. So for example, if you want to provide training on human relations in a banking sector, perhaps you need to benchmark your human relationship with perhaps a hospitality sector, and then try to see whether to what extent that we can improve these kind of capabilities as well. There is much room for improvement in this, and as HR professionals, we need to find out to what extent we do this. Performance appraisal is something that we constantly carry out. Again, you can see most of the organizations, except of course highly developed private sector organizations, this is carried out as a routine exercise. And the government institution is just a routine exercise to satisfy some of the circulars. And of course, if you want to really use the performance appraisal, we need to have appropriate KPIs developed to suit our job roles and set the targets with these KPIs, and we need to design the motivational incentives and increased performance with these performance appraisal. So there is tremendous room for improvement in this aspect as well. Again, as HR professionals, we need to find out, are we doing this to suit the organization, to suit the KPIs, or have you identified the KPIs to suit the performance that we need to measure from our employees? Keeping abreast with the technology is a challenge today, as there is a rapid change of technology in all aspects with the ICT, Internet of Things, and as well, every industry is moving rapidly, embracing new technologies. As HR professionals, we need to see how best we take on board within our practices of HR, as well as to see what kind of technological training that we need to provide to our employees. So therefore, we need to have an idea. If you have a good idea about your business and industry, perhaps, of course, you can find out more on the technological developments that are taking place. So this needs continuous professional development of your employees and as HR professionals ourselves as well. Keep abreast with the compliance needs. Today, of course, when our life standard going up, we have all sorts of things coming up as well. Compliance requirements to make sure we do quality delivery of our services, address the discrimination, sexual harassment, human rights, compliance needs of all our statutory requirements like EPF, gratuity, and other benefits, disciplinary investigation and action, develop and implement organization policies. It's a very important part of us to develop necessary policies, suitable policies within the organization. Again, we need to find out, are we doing our job very correctly? And there are lots of instances where HR has messed up with the investigations, and we have lawsuits going to the courts trying to find out, wasting time and money of the organization. So these are the things that we really need to concentrate and enhance our capabilities. Then attracting talent, a very critical part. We must make sure when the labor market is tight, it's very difficult to attract the best talent to us. And sometimes when we advertise for the post, we just merely advertise to get as large number of applications. But I think today we need to be very focused. We need to headhunt. We need to identify the exact talent that we need and work towards that. Like when we market, we identify exactly the customer segment that we need to attack, we need to reach. So similarly, we need to identify exact potential segment of the people that we need to really reach. And so there we have plenty of room to improve. The talent retention is again very important function. we need to find out whether we do really properly to make sure that we do take action on the talent retention, whether you decided the suitable compensation packages, providing a rewarding working environment, implement suitable rewards and recognition, career progression, personalized onboarding, and to provide facilities for work-life balances. And particularly in the government sector, very difficult to handle these with the salary scales, scheme of recruitment, and other needs. But private sector, we have some tolerance, and we can certainly address these aspects to do that. So this talent retention is not just the remuneration, but there are lots of other things that we as HR professionals need to provide in our organization. Employee engagement, very important. Many organizations have some kind of strategy to make sure employee engagement, and I don't go into the details with my time limitations and practice that we do, but most of the organization, there is tremendous improvement that we need to carry, that we need to address when we provide the employee engagement as well. And with that, we move on to the COVID challenge again, challenge that we are facing, everybody. Again, it's a completely unexpected. We need to find out ways of working from home, ICT facilities and devices. How do we provide them? Confidentiality data, documents, security, tracking staff engagement, employee retrenchment, revised compensation. Again, new policies that we need to really carry out. So we need to be ready with these kind of disasters and unexpected incidents, how that we support the organization to deal with these kind of challenges. With that, I just would like to move on to the last couple of slides on HRM research. And when I looked at the number of papers that are lined up, both by several parties, actually, HR professionals, CIPM students, university students, and also poster presentations, they cover very important aspects that we need to really cover in HR research. What I think most of the time in our research that we carry out in Sri Lanka and by most of the universities as well, that we do not really focus on application of research findings to practical problems. We do research, we publish, and then that's perhaps the end of that. And we really don't try to use the findings of the research in our practical applications. And in that context, I was happy to hear from Dr. Jayawardena as well, that you indicated that you need to really put together and then make some publications from the chartered CIPM as well. And that is a way that we need to really go ahead, because we need to carry out research leading to real industry issues. And we need to find out why some of these research findings and the problems that we have identified are not really implemented. And most of the time, research is there, results are there, but we don't really implement in the organizations. And in that context, CIPM has a big role to play, that we document these research findings, disseminate to all people, HR professionals, and to have some kind of a monitoring mechanism to see to what extent they practice this and whether these research findings are implemented. Otherwise, we are doing this research over and over again. Next year again, same research is repeated, and following year again repeated, and make a publication, but then we are not really moving with improving the quality of our HR practice in the organization. So please make sure that we document some of these findings and follow up to see whether we are really implementing this. With that, I would like to move on to my last slide, the key messages that we need to take on board. And HRM is an umbrella profession with ever increasing scope and potential. So therefore, we are in a very strategic position. Evolving roles include that we need to be a strategic partner, employee advocate, and a change champion. We need to move from traditional bureaucratic management to agile management. HRM should be equipped to overcome negative perception, understand industry and business, manage and foster relationships, provide need-based training and development. How effectively do we do this? That we need to address. We need to do proper performance appraisal and effectively use the results of that for the organization growth. Keep abreast with evolving technology and compliance. Attract best talent, create environment for talent retention and employee engagement. How effectively we do this? Adjust to disasters such as COVID. Focus on application research fundings to practical problems that we face. We need to carry out research needed to address real industry issues and to find out implementation effectiveness. And CIPM is to document and promote findings as best industry practices. I think that is the kind of keynote address that I just would like to conclude. And I hope that you will continue to provide this expertise through CIPM by carrying out research and disseminating these research findings for not only enhancement of the profession of the human resource, but in addition to that, obviously for the growth and development of our organizations to be locally and globally competitive. Thank you very much, Dr. Jayawardena and Mr. Amarasinghe as well.
HR stands today and what is expected us on how we should practice HR in the future and the present. So your presence has added a lot of value to our symposium. We are almost coming to the end of the inauguration ceremony, but we are not there yet. We will now show you some poster presentations and then move on to the technical sessions, where there will be 3 parallel technical sessions on this first ever online symposium organized by CIPM. And probably the most awaited session in this event will be the plenary sessions, where there will be HR experts from the industry at a panel discussion on the impact of HR strategies and practices on the success of Sri Lankan organizations, which will be held from 2:30 to 4. Now, to give you a snapshot of the symposium and details on the technical sessions, we will now watch the symposium highlights.
The Chartered Institute of Personnel Management Symposium Highlights. The Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, or CIPM, was founded in 1959 and was incorporated by an Act of Parliament in 1976. It was elevated to chartered status by the Parliament of Sri Lanka on the 28th of September 2018 by amending the Act. President of CIPM and council members led CIPM. CIPM Research Symposium has been redesigned by the symposium chair, Dr. Chandana Jayawardena, to enhance the CIPM research culture and to materialize the academic efforts of the HRM fraternity. Symposium consists of a plenary session with renowned HR practitioners and 3 technical sessions of HR practitioners, CIPM members, CIPM students, and university students. Technical Session A: HR practitioners, CIPM members, and scholars. Session B: CIPM students. Session C: University students. presentations.
Thank you. I would also like to say that the next, we will be having the plenary sessions from 3 to 4:30, where there will be HR experts from the industry at a panel discussion on the impact of HR strategies and practices on the success of Sri Lankan organizations. Now, I'll also like to take this opportunity to thank the premium sponsor for this event, Top Jobs, the most popular advertising website for career and recruitment.
Go to www.topjobs.lk and find a job that suits you. Top Jobs has the latest fast-moving jobs in accountancy, marketing, IT, HR, banking, and many more. And get those top jobs to your phone now. Simply sign up and get job alerts to your phone instantly. www.topjobs.lk for jobs, careers, and recruitment.
Now, we will be moving on to the technical sessions. Therefore, those who would like to listen to researchers by CIPM members, HRM practitioners, and scholars, please remain on this platform. Those who would like to listen to researchers by CIPM students, please join the Microsoft Teams platform. And those who would like to listen to the researchers by university students, please join the Zoom Teams platform. The links have been sent to you yesterday. Therefore, click on the relevant links as per the categories that were mentioned just now. Within the technical sessions, we will also be having a break, a virtual lunch from 12:30 to 1. Now we will start the poster sessions, and the oral presentations of the technical sessions will start in 15 minutes.
Resource Management Practices and Organizational Efficiency, RUPR Jayawardena, Chartered Member, working for Janata State Development Board as the Manager Human Resources. The definition of the HRM also covers the effectiveness and efficiency element of the context. Hence, the effectiveness and efficiency element of this research were most important. In this research, examine the relationship between selected key results areas of HRM and organizational effectiveness, and analyze the employees' feedback on the above concept and revisit the present practices of the organization. Hopkins, year 2000, suggested that quantitative research approach connects independent variables and dependent variables. Hence, the study was conducted using quantitative method to collect data. According to the Crosswell, year 2012 also focuses that as the researcher anticipate data collectors, they need to respect the participants and cite for the research. According to the Cameron, year 2015, there is no single and correct definition of organizational effectiveness exists. Also focuses few models. Research strategy is focused at overall plan for conducting a research and its guide researcher in planning, executing and monitoring the research, and also research method focuses how to collect data and how to analyze the data. Selected key results areas of human resource management of the organization are related to the organizational effectiveness. Thank you.
I am Mr. Muthukumarana. My research study was the study on the effect of work stress on staff performance of ABC organization. When give the introduction to this topic, work stress in organization is one of significant factor which reduce the work performance. Therefore, this study focuses to find out causes which influence work stress and its effect on staff performance of the ABC organization. This methodology developed using conceptual model identified using relationship between two variable work stress and staff performance. Under the finding at the using of 0.05 significant level, reject the null hypothesis and accepted the alternative hypothesis. Under the conclusion, demand for work and career advancement contributed to the staff performance. However, support given by superior and relations at workplace did not show a significant relation in the organization. Therefore, research recommended to adopt worldwide related work stress related standard to manage the work stress. Thank you.
This study was conducted to identify the impact of work-life balance on the job satisfaction among female bank employees of Sri Lanka. The reason for selecting this industry is due to the nature of higher labor dependency. Our labor force comprises of 8.3 million workers, out of which 2.9 million or 34.9% are female workers. Anyhow, in the banking industry, female participation is at 45%. Work-life balance of these employees have a direct relationship with their job satisfaction, and the level of job satisfaction leads for the ultimate performance outcomes of the banking industry as a whole. And any changes to existing processes will definitely have an effect on the job satisfaction and their work-life balance. The significant positive correlations proves possible transference of positive or negative effect of work-life balance to job satisfaction, vice versa. As HCMs, when redefining employee roles and responsibilities and taking sensible measures to reduce or eliminate resistance to change, such initiatives should not become a hindrance to the work-life balance and job satisfaction of employees who are enjoying today, but should be for the benefit of the both ends of the polar, the business entity as well as the employees.
Most organizations are utilizing ICT projects to manage their human resources. However, there is a challenge to determine and quantify whether the project benefits are actually realized. The study provides a scientific approach to identify and measure benefits, the extent to which it is actually realized. The methodology is a concurrent embedded design in nature, and the project environment will be accordingly tested. The pilot study is conveyed to the main study, and parallel triangulation with HR managers through an interview process will enable trustworthiness. The managers represent the different domains, program, portfolio, project, and enterprise, so that the test groups are of heterogeneous combination. We can corroborate the test results by qualitative triangulation. When operation automation and customer engagement is coupled under fuzzy controlled environment, the benefit is realized moderately, 0.49 as per MATLAB findings. Similarly, other variables are coupled and generalizability is possible. When concerning HR benefit through IT investment, the study has two practical implications. First, benefit managers can identify and measure the benefits yielded, particularly in intangible outcomes. And secondly, HR managers are able to review and monitor benefits yielding through streamlining the HR process of recruitment, training and development, or performance review.
The poster is based on the applicability of artificial intelligence for selected HR functions in the apparel industry. As we all know, the monorealistic information technology and the accession of machines powers through the artificial intelligence in the 21st century with the emergence of technology. The general objective of the study to find out the applicability of artificial intelligence for the HR functions of recruitment and selection, performance management, and decision-making process. The study can be considered as a descriptive study since this research was not built up on a conceptual framework or hypothesis. As the primary data collection technique, the researcher decided to follow random sampling technique and distribute a questionnaire within 10 different selected apparel companies among 40 members. As per the findings of the selected HR functions such as recruitment selection, performance management, and decision making, majority of the respondents stated that the implementation of artificial intelligence will help for an effective internal process of company, and it was questioned under the question number 24 of the questionnaire and proved under the fourth bar chart. According to the research, the executive employees are interested on the implementation of artificial intelligence for the selected HR functions in the future, and if they will be more comfortable of this implementation. As per this statistic, found out through the literatures, the apparel industry will be able to implement artificial intelligence-based HR functions to the industry with the technological development. But the most highlighted challenge was lack of resource person and the initial cost for the implementation of artificial intelligence-based system.
Ladies and gentlemen, to maintain the status of IT industry as the fourth leading expert heritage in Sri Lanka, modern organizations have recognized the importance of the intangible assets as to achieve competitiveness by identifying psychological and cultural factors as motivation influence of knowledge management practices. The main unit was non-executive IT professionals in all departments of the selected organization, while 104 questionnaires established a sample by using simple random method. This used a monoquantitative method by collecting only quantitative data over online survey. This research was a field study having a cross-sectional nature by measuring data at one point in time. Further, IBM SPSS version 20 software was used to analyze data. Under findings, you can see the summary of demographical and professional characteristics of employees. In addition to that, from reliability analysis, values of Cronbach alpha in all factors indicated the reliability coefficients. As you can see, descriptive analysis is done to find the most important criteria in the variables of this research. Correlation analysis reveals 6 positive significant relationships between above variables. Based on the regression analysis and moving to conclusion, this shows a positive significant relationship between relational psychological contract and transactional psychological contract with the knowledge management practices. Further, this emphasizes the significant moderation effect of organizational culture on the above relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now be starting the oral sessions shortly. I hope everybody has come to their relevant platforms. Welcome to the oral presentations of the technical sessions of CIPM members, scholars, and HR professionals, where they will be presenting their findings in this session. Our first presenter today is Tarindu Gunathilaka. He will be presenting the findings of an exploratory study on the existing practices and expectations of performance appraisals in 5 selected industries in Sri Lanka.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope your minds are full with all the knowledge and research insights. Yet I invite you to be mindful in the next couple of minutes as I present my research on the exploratory study of practices and expectations of performance appraisals in 5 selected industries in Sri Lanka. So this is the order in which that I'm going to present my research. This research focuses on performance appraisals. Let me first define performance appraisal. PA is the integral part of performance management system that measures the performance of employees, providing many inputs for other functions such as training, development, compensation, so on and so forth, as per Grot and Grot. So this research being an exploratory study The scope of the research was kept quite wide, and the focus is on 5 service-oriented industries, namely construction and real estate, information technology, banking, and finance, electronics and telecommunication, education, and customer services. Moving on to the research question. So the research question that I tried to address through this research was to see the gaps between the existing performance appraisal practices and expectations in those 5 selected industries in the eyes of the people who design and implement those systems. So I found two evidences to justify my research. First being a pilot research which was conducted by 2 executives, which reveals that 71% were not happy with their existing performance appraisal systems. And secondly, the claim made by Professor O'Parker of most of local companies lack effective performance appraisal systems. The objectives of the study was actually the primary objective. The general objective is to study, to explore the diverse methods and techniques of performance appraisals in 5 different industries. And the specific objective is to see the gaps between the existing and the expected performance appraisal system in Sri Lanka. And since this research was done as an exploratory study, there's no variables or activities testing involved. Rather, I tried to answer 2 questions. First, what to measure performance in performance appraisal, and second, how to measure performance in performance appraisal. This model you see addressed to the first question, which is how to what to measure performance. This was developed by the author with the works of Armstrong, Bloomberg, and Marwa. In this, you will find some domains which can be measured to gauge performance. If you take this mental and physical effort and also the capacity, so they mostly attributes the behaviors. Different behaviors, you can measure those. And according to literature, a particular behavior that gets habituated or a behavior that is happening quite consistently is called a trait. So in this, I have considered traits, behaviors, and results as instruments or yardsticks of measuring performance. And moving on to the second part of the conceptual framework. Initially, I have established what to measure, 3 criteria, and second, how to measure those, how to measure performance in all these 3 criteria, which are methods and techniques. This was also developed from the literature from Marwa. And moving on to methodology. So this is an exploratory study using survey study method, and the population constitutes 226 HR professionals and also corporate executives who involved in design and implementing performance appraisal systems in those 5 selected industries. Purposive sampling was used since the researcher was being selective in finding the respondents, and also snowball sampling was also used because the particular questioning was forwarded to one set of respondents, and I asked them to share the same with their circle of friends. So that's how this snowball sampling came into the picture. And then mixed research strategy was used together, both quantitative and qualitative data. And qualitative data was mainly sourced from through a questionnaire administered through online, which is actually a Google form. And then interviews, observation, and focus group discussions were used to gather qualitative data. And analysis was confined to descriptive statistics, simple descriptive statistics. And findings, quantitative findings, actually 55.6% expressed dissatisfaction towards their existing performance appraisals, out of which the worst is from construction industry, and 40% of the people define the performance as the ability to keep producing desired results, which is more future-oriented, and 60% believe performance as either past traits or past behaviors or attainment of goals in the past, which has where they view performance as a past phenomenon. And 78% consider it seriously as the responsibility of all managers, not just HR team. which contradicts with the actual practice. So moving on to the comparison, the disparity between what practice and what expects. So as you can see, 52% believe performance has some sort of result or outcome. It can be either attainment of past goals or ability to meet desired results. Whereas 90% didn't measure outcomes at all. And 90%, over 90% of the respondents believe all three measures, traits, behaviors, and outcomes should be measured in appraisals, whereas 10% less than 10% measure all three. And 87.4% believe PA as developmental tool, whereas they practice it mostly as an administrative tool. And 38% has web-based systems with less than 10% fully automated systems, but majority prefers automated systems. And in 40% of the companies, the appraisal was done by the supervisor, and 23% practice patients with feedback, whereas majority prefers multiple levels of appraisals, horizontally and vertically. 40.7% view performance, practice performance as an involved event, whereas 7.1% have monthly and continuous appraisals, and majority expect continuous appraisals. Moving on to the qualitative findings, mostly people have viewed the process of performance appraisal as not very transparent and fair, and the eyes of those people who implement it. And the goal setting process was not in order in most of the times, and there's no proper alignment of individual goals with divisional and company goals, which leads to all congruence. And PA was mostly viewed as a standalone event, and their inputs to other HR functions like training and compensation is not up to standard, I would say. And let me quote one remark made by one line manager from the construction company. Open quote: "PA is the last thing that I want to do, and I do PA performance appraisals because HR keep on calling me until I send the PA results." Close quote. There are many such remarks expressed by the respondents, which leads to the conclusion that PA is mostly viewed as a daily and administrative task, and it is the responsibility of HR team, not the responsibility of the general managers. And then all these findings leads to the main conclusion: yes, there is a gap between existing practices and the expectations of performance management, performance appraisals in the selected population, which is a research-worthy gap. And these findings validates the claim of Opata that most of Sri Lankan companies lack effective performance appraisal systems. And there is general dissatisfaction towards PA systems in the eyes of people who design and implement these PA systems. If the level of dissatisfaction is this much among the people who design and implement, you can assume that people who are being appraised or general employees must have a much greater dissatisfaction. And IT and banking sectors were found with higher satisfaction, rather construction and education sectors, industries were found with lower satisfaction, which we can reach the conclusion that those industries were not having sound appraisal systems. And all these industries are service-oriented industries, and we can conclude that service-oriented organizations have appraisals which are characterized by behavior-oriented criteria for measuring performance. And as a final conclusion, I would say, here I have tried to measure, to look into the expectations and the practices, and we can extend this research into constructing ideal performance appraisal systems for selected industries. And also in the same company, we can introduce different performance appraisal systems to different levels. We can construct a good combination of outcomes and behaviors in different industries and different levels of the same organization, which can be a good future research area. So the purpose of this research is research and exploratory study. So findings can be used for more inclusive research, and this can be based as a precursor to more inclusive research. And these are some of the key references that are used in this research. And as a concluding remark, let me leave you with a quote by Peter Drucker, a management guru. He says, employees pose no loyalty, no love. Employees pose performance, nothing else. If performance is that important, measuring it must be at least as important as performance itself. I hope you have gained something. I would like to take this opportunity to thank CIPM and the research committee, particularly my special thanks goes to Dr. Jayawardena for all the guidance and the opportunity. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for the findings on performance appraisals. We next have the findings presented on the impact of training and development and supervisor support on employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. The moderating role of the work environment. This will be presented by Shanika Palligedara.
Good afternoon. I warmly welcome all of you to my research presentation named The Impact of Training and Development and Supervisor Support on Employee Retention in Selected Private Banks in Sri Lanka, the moderating role of the work environment. I'm Shanika Palligedara. So this is the overview of my presentation. So firstly, I'll explain you the background of my study. As we all know, in recent era, human resource become more important resource for each and every organization, especially in the banking sector. Because banking sector is always experiencing changes such as technological changes, increasing competition, growing diversity of customer needs like that. Therefore, banks always need to have an efficient and energetic workforce to handle all these issues. Despite this, banking sector is always experiencing huge employee turnover due to the heavy work pressure. Based on all these factors, this study was designed to measure the impact of training and development and supervisor support on employee retention, and further it was analyzed the moderating role of work environment towards the identified impact. These are the research questions. There are 4 research questions. First one is, what is the impact of training and development on employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka? Second one, what is the impact of supervisor support on employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka? Third question is, what is the moderating role of work environment between training and development and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka? The fourth question is, what is the moderating role of work environment between supervisor support and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka? So based on the research questions, there are 4 research objectives. First one is to determine the impact of training and development and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. Second one, to determine the impact of supervisor support and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. Third, to identify the moderating role of work environment between training and development and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. The last objective is to identify the moderating role of work environment between supervisor support and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. So this is the conceptual framework of my research. Altogether there are 4 variables. Training and development and supervisor support are the independent variables. Employee retention is the dependent variable, and the work environment is the moderating variable of my study. When it comes to the research methodology, the study type is analytical investigation, time of study is cross-sectional study, period of analysis is individual, population of the study is all executive level employees in selected private banks in Colombo district, Sri Lanka. Sample of the study is randomly selected 150 executive employees in selected private banks in Colombo district, Sri Lanka. Data collection method is structured questionnaire. So data was analyzed by using SPSS 24, And statistical analysis methods are univariate analysis, such as descriptive statistic techniques, bivariate analysis, such as correlation analysis, simple regression analysis, multivariate analysis, such as multiple regression analysis. So next, I move on to the findings of my research. Finding number 1 is impact of training and development on employee retention. So here, based on the results that you can see in the summarized tables, you can see the R value for the relationship is 0.568. So R value denotes the relationship between training and development and employee retention. So you can see, based on the R value, we can say there is a highly positive impact on employee retention by training and development. Also, the F value for the impact is 70.407 and the R square value is 32.2 and the P value is 0.00. Based on all these findings, we can say the training and development is significantly explain the variance of 32% to variance of employee retention. Next, I will move on to the finding number 2, that is impact of supervisor support on employee retention. So here the R value is 0.624. So we can say there is a highly positive relationship between supervisor support and employee retention. And further, R square value is 38.9%. F value is 94.262 and the P value is 0.00. So from that also we can say supervisor support has significantly explained 38.9% variance of employee retention. So next finding number 3 is moderating role of work environment between training and development and employee retention. Since the researcher has added moderating variable to the study, here the researcher has used 2 models. Model 1 without the interaction of working environment moderating effect and the model 2 with the moderating effect of work environment. As per the R square value summarized in this table, you can see R value for the model 1 is 0.568 while R value for the model 2 is 0.636. Therefore, we can see R value has increased after the interacting effect of work environment. Therefore, we can say there is a highly positive relationship between training and development and employee retention after the interaction of moderating effect of work environment. Also, the F value is further, if we analyze the results that we got for the interaction plot, we can see there are high level of work environment and the high level of training and development will create the high level of employee retention. Next, I will move on to the finding number 4. Here also the researcher has 2 models. Model 1 is without the interaction of work environment. Model 2 is without the interaction of work environment. So here also we can see R value for model 1 is 0.624, R value for model 2 is 0.671 and R value has increased after involving interaction effect of work environment. Therefore, we can say that there is a highly positive relationship between supervisor support and employee retention after involving the interaction effect of work environment. And also, as per the value we got for the model 2, that is for R square value is 45.1%. So we can say after involving the work environment effect into the relationship, supervisor support has significantly explained 45.1% of variance of employee retention. So if we see the interaction plot here, we can see high level of work environment with the high level of supervisor support will lead to the higher level of employee retention. So based on the findings that I have explained so far, it can be concluded that training and development has impact on employee retention, supervisor support has impact on employee retention, Work environment is moderating the relationship between training and development and employee retention. Work environment is moderating the relationship between supervisor support and employee retention in selected private banks in Sri Lanka. So these are the key references for my study. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for the findings on training and development and employee retention. The next study will be on the continuous performance of airport and aviation services through leadership execution, a case study on the growth driven by multifaceted leadership styles in the aviation sector. Authors are Shamira Jayawardena, Samantha Ratnayaka and Ravi Bamanusinghe, presented by Shamira Jayawardena.
Yes, today I am going to talk about how the continuous performance of airport and aviation service Sri Lanka was achieved through executing diverse leadership style. That's my topic for this prestigious CIPM Symposium. Yeah, going into the topic, this is my overview. Basically, I am going to present the company introduction, theme of the case study, objectives of the case study, and literature review little bit, and also case framework, methodology, narration, as well as the most interesting part of my presentation, discussion and findings as well as conclusions. Right. This is our interesting geographical location of this prestigious institution where I'm going to present today. So, as an overview, I would like to present the summarized version of this our company information. In fact, it was incorporated under the Companies Act on 23rd February 1982, long ago. And this company is a government company, and the Simulation Act has empowered to act as the statutory service provider, VSL, to operate all kinds of aviation aerodromes in Sri Lanka. And this has 20 divisions and 5 units and diverse locations like Kadunayaka, Ratmalana, Batikto, last year Jaffna and Mantara as well, and 4,000 good staff. And also, this award as a Best Employee Award and Presidential Environmental Award as well as Annual Report Award. I would like to say very interesting thing about this. Like, this is complies with triple bottom line, sustainability. It has addressed all 3 areas by getting the Annual Report Awards with the 10 billion profits figure, as well as the Best Employee Award, that means people figure, as well as President Environmental Award, planet figure. That means it's a sustainable entity. Going forward, basically this is the theme of the whole case study. This case study is how this continuous performance, I already told you, it has a very good profits. It's the best company in Sri Lanka, state company in Sri Lanka, who reached 10 billion profits, where majority of companies are incurring huge losses. In that sense, I have 3 objectives. Basically, I want to explain how this particular company achieved this continuous performance drive throughout the decades period. That means 2019 to 2018 period. As well as, yes. Second one is how this continuous performance drive was backed by different leadership styles. Being a government entity, normally time to time, chairman, board of directors have been changed. Even taking that as a challenge, this company was able to achieve continuous performance style, even under different chairmanships, different leaderships. And finally, linking these 2 objectives, I am going to conclude how this continuous performance drive is determined by the key driver called leadership styles. Why it is so significant? As I have already told you, majority of the companies in Sri Lanka, state companies in Sri Lanka, including a huge losses. As per this Daily Mirror, only collectively 5 companies in Sri Lanka, 5 major key companies in Sri Lanka, state companies in Sri Lanka, are responsible for more than 605 billion losses in 2015. In such an atmosphere, this particular company itself recorded a 10 billion profits in 2017 as alone. Is significant. Therefore, the scope is continuous performance. The unit of analysis by case study is Airport and Aviation Service Sri Lanka Limited. This basically a literature review of my entire case study. Actually, during this case study, I studied 125 ranked journal articles. I got the references, valuable references for this case study through 125 solid ranking journals. Out of that, A-star journals, almost 34 A-star journal references, A 46 A journal references, and B categories, B rank journal 29 and C 16. All the references are coming out of these ranked journal articles for this particular study. These are basically the pillars I consider. This I mentioned the journal references. Almost you see, almost all journals are from A-star journals. Therefore, there are very solid literature framework is backed by this particular case study. And these are leadership styles also. Leadership styles, I basically considered the transactional leader, democratic leader, bureaucratic leader for this particular case study. And also the continuous performance I determined using the literature. You are basically using two aspects. Because in the literature, the continuous performance is many locations is defined as it's just financial perspective. That means you consider, when you consider continuous performance, it's all about achieving good return on investment, good profitability, good shareholder ratings, and it's like purely based on financial perspective. That is number one under the continuous performance. And also certain literature, certain academia like Venkataraman and Ramanujan and all, they highlighted this continuous performance as a just like a meeting objectives or like a productivity enhancement measurement. Or that aspect I define continuous performance. In case of leadership styles, basically I came to notice these triple leadership styles, that means transactional and democratic, as well as you see, these bureaucratic leadership styles. Right. Then going forward, this is my case framework. You know, the continuous performance of ASL is the major outcome of this case study. That is a continuous performance of ASL. And the key driver of this case study is execution of leadership style. That means I'm going to disclose and I'm going to unearth how the continuous performance of Airport and Aviation Services Sri Lanka is achieved through execution of leadership style at the ideal mix. So this is the case framework. To support that my argument, other than this key driver, I use there are two another drivers as well. They are not key drivers but supporting drivers. They are implementation of service quality aspects as well as some sort of strategic human resource management drive in the ASL culture. And of course, you know, this is the like state company, so rules and regulations play a vital role in like some sort of moderator in this case study. Toward this case study, yeah, this is the case framework. And going forward, yes, what is my methodology of this study? You know, whatever the like exploratory or whatever the case study or whatever the research, the methodology, data collection methodology is a vital part. So in that sense, for this study, I got almost 1 year, more than 1 year to do this case study. I collected information using basically like secondary data. As you see, like there are a lot of secondary data, like almost all annual reports published, the history of ASL, then newsletter series, award applications, NBA, website, and as well as board meeting minutes, confidential board meeting minutes, social media posts, and government published reports like Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, like that, and also various internal presentations, ministry presentations. In addition, 20 research reports, surveys, and 13 conference paper features papers proceedings are used as secondary data. The most interesting part of this case study is I got a primary data using direct interview, very straightforward interview. Almost all key positions of Airport Aviation, like chairman, board of directors, all board members, and even 2 cabinet ministers are interviewed, Honorable Nimal Sripala Silva and as well as subsequently Honorable Arjuna. I interviewed those 2 cabinet ministers to get the clear picture of what is going on. And also I got 6 focus group discussion, including all trade union leaders, almost all trade union leaders. I had a roundtable discussion, And also, I got an opportunity to the company secretary to observe board meetings to get a good idea about what's going on. And also, I had some sort of like, ASL is like very associated with the passengers, especially foreigners. So I had a short overseas passenger discussion as well, like UK, USA, Sweden, Japan, Chinese, and all people. I had a small short overseas passenger discussions. And almost all interviews, focus group discussions done in a methodological way by a properly output interview guide. That's all about my methodology to get primary and secondary data for this prestigious study. And if you want to see my 400 pages interview booklet, summarizing all these transcripts into one booklet, summarizing all this information. Yes, these are basically the people, then staff I interview. You see like in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, like including 2 cabinet ministers and also overseas passengers and all. It's a mixture of all the people I interviewed to get a primary data. That was really helpful to do a very accurate, very good study in the leadership arena of Airport and Aviation Service Sri Lanka Limited. Yeah, it's about that. And this is the most interesting part of my case study. I summarized everything I studied and I discovered into one timeline. You see like the particular 3 chairmen in the top, like chairman 1, chairman 2, and chairman 3. It's timeline and studied from 2019 to 2018. That is my period. And before this, before study is 1983, 2018, another period. You see there is a very small development in that area. Actually, there's nothing. And financial terms, for this graph, I evaluated 3 financial aspects. One is profits. How this particular period, depending on the leader, how profits increase, as well as shareholder funds, as well as total revenue. They are the key financial consideration of the study. Other than that, other operational considerations, operational KPI, key performance indicators are in the bottom of this graph. That is the aircraft movements and passenger movements, as well as cargo movements. Now, interesting thing is now this 2009 to 2014, this particular chairman 1, Mr. Prasad Vikram was leading this company. 2015 to 2016, this Mr. Anand Vimalasena was leading as a second chairman. And finally, Mr. Saman Nedired was leading from 2016 onwards. So you see, almost all, like irrespective of the leader, almost all financial KPIs, key performance indicators, as well as operational KPIs were in a very impressive year during this period. And various, these short icons represent various key events handled by using a particular sign I have given to easily recognize. And you see, like all these, I think around more than 60, 70 such events I have listed in the timeline. All events I can easily link to my key drivers. That means basically this exhibition of leadership styles based on each shaman, as well as other supporting drivers like service quality aspect as well as SHRM aspects, right? So this summarizes the whole story of Airport and Aviation Service Sri Lanka timeline. Now you can see by looking at this graph, you can easily ascertain the primary data. What I collected from the primary data is very accurate because it's almost all in an impressive year respect to the charm. Only difference is the leadership style adopted by different charm. It's not the same style adopted by CH1 and not a CH2 and CH3. They have diverse and nice different kind of leadership styles throughout this 10 years period. Then, yeah. Now, data analysis and findings. This is very important. What I found after doing all these analysis, right? Now, when considered, as I earlier explained, this continuous performance, right? Continuous performance in the literature defined as a 2 aspects. One is on financial perspective. You boost your financial ratios, return on investment, profitability, and return on equity and all. That's academic assist. That's the definition of continuous performance in one aspect. Also, productivity improvements also in other aspect. This is the A-star journal references, theories backed by my research. And yeah, that is theory. What I observed is exactly interested in this theory. That's a very impressive thing. Because you know, exactly like this theory, during this period, this company achieved the continuous performance drive. Not like any other company, any other government institutions. They have increased their shareholder funds, profits, as well as revenues in a very like double-digit figures, 30%, 72%, and 35%. It's very remarkable. No other company did this in Sri Lanka. In private sector companies, you see this profit margin for 2017, 53%. I challenge even any other private organizations does not record this type of like a very interesting profit margin. It's a very remarkable in the case of Jayawardena Service Sri Lanka, 150%. And second one is continuous execution of leadership style. That also I, as earlier mentioned, I studied 3 theories like transaction leadership, democratic and bureaucratic sort of leadership styles. And during this period, what I observed is also in line with, for example, if we consider Chairman 1 period, that is Mr. Prasanna Wickramasuriya, who has a military background, he showed a transaction leadership styles. Now, all the theories listed out the features, leader traits, listed out transaction leadership style. I validated through interviews. They are with Mr. Prasanna Wickramasuriya, Chairman 1. Second one is democratic leader. That means substitute Mr. Ananda appointed as a leader. He was some sort of democratic, very distinct person, very humble person. So in that period, exactly comparing this theoretical academia and all, existence of democratic leader is clearly evident throughout this period, 2014-2015. And thirdly, after 2015 election, we got some sort of very rule-based, compliance-oriented chairman, that was engineer, Saman Ediriran. He was very bureaucratic. Now, I got, using secondary data and primary data, I surprised to see all the features listed on the bureaucratic leadership style I can see inside this particular third chairman. But after analyzing all these triple sort of leaders, the only common feature is, irrespective of the leadership style they followed, they continuously backed, continuously pushed all financial KPIs as well as operational KPIs towards the data heads. They always increased all the ratios and all towards the upper digits. Finally achieved 10 billion, almost 10 billion profits in 2017. So remarkable. And next year's findings, finally, it was very clear. To this, as I previously mentioned, under my objectives, I verified very clearly this particular company, Airport and Aviation Services Sri Lanka Limited, they achieved continuous performance drive. It's very clear. It was validated by both primary and secondary data. And also, secondly, this continuous performance drive basically determined by the key driver called leadership styles, irrespective of whether transactional, whether democratic, or whether bureaucratic. That was the key drive behind this continuous performance drive of the Aviation Service Sri Lanka. Interestingly, after the whole, I got a very good model. I was able to come up with a very unique model to evaluate this leadership arena. One is this, this particular circle, if you consider profits. Other one is, say, people. Other one is, say, policies and procedures. I found this, where the common place is in case of Airport Aviation Service Sri Lanka, is democratic leader, represented by Mr. Ananda, represent all these characters. He concerned profits, people as well as regulations. 3 P's. So he was here. And when considered profits and people, one called Mr. Major Prasanna Wickramasuriya, who has a military background, he was the leader during 2019-2015. He was here. He was a very transaction side of leader. He always considers the profits and this is people side. But he does not much worry about rules and regulations. If you want to do something to benefit of the company, he did. And finally, under engineer Saman Ediriran, you see, he has some sort of bureaucratic leader. He considers always profits as well as policies. He was much concerned as policies, but he does not much concern about people, but he managed very well. compliance, audit requirements and all, he managed very well. This is the whole story of this case study. And in addition, I came up with a new model called PPL, that means Bureaucratic Transaction Emergent Leadership Style, to make a further research in this area. This is a model I developed with this case study. Finally, conclusions are these conclusions. It was my study exactly achieved the objectives I said initially. That is very clear. It achieved continuous performance drive throughout this period, and this continuous performance drive was backed by execution leadership styles. And finally, anyone who read this case study has these study questions that they further research. How different leadership styles, such as transaction, democratic, and bureaucratic leadership drive based on a state company to achieve continuous performance. How state organizations like KCL, despite changing leadership role, changing board of directors throughout a decade, drives its financial and operational KPIs towards data X, as well as finally how the concept like strategic talent and service quality support at the same drive. Yes, that's all about my case study. Hope you enjoyed this presentation and this case study, and which can be considered as a very pilot case study in respect of government state sector compliance. Thank you very much. And I take this opportunity to thank special thanks and gratitude to CIPM, Chartered Institute of Personal Management, for arranging this type of valuable webinar and valuable knowledge sharing sessions to share our knowledge throughout the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the findings on performance and leadership execution. I think a lot of hard work has gone to present these findings in this forum today. We will now present the findings on the study on antecedents of employee engagement by authors Sachetana Siriwardana and Prabhashini Vijayawanta, presented by Sachetana Siriwardana.
Good morning. My topic is impact of legal reformations to embrace the change the role of HR. It is very important to understand if you need to have the change of HRM, we should have reformations of laws to embrace the change of HRM in future. Why I say like that? Because still as a country, Sri Lanka is governed by the British laws, what was imposed before decades. Sri Lanka was a colony for more than decades, and still we are existing, and we are adjudicating the systems by governing the rules of British standards. If we need a change of the HRM, human resource management, is very much important to make it clear that the laws that govern the human resources should be changed, because labor laws are considered as a very key point in HRM. HRM and labor regime laws are considered as a both sides of one coin. As an introduction to this presentation, it is very much important to make it clear that if we need to have a change of HRM, we should have a change of laws. We cannot embrace the change without legal reforms. Now, considering Sri Lanka was a colonial for more than decades. Based on that, the government authorities implemented labor laws to rule the country. What was imposed in British? In that era, the world was facing an industrial revolution. Based on that, the laws what was imposed by British to face the social context of British foreign aliens. So what the governing bodies, what they did, they implemented same legal governing authorities to Sri Lanka, what was similar to their countries. So it was a mismatch. They did that. But for today, after decades, even after 21st century, we are facing this same, we are using the same legal authorities in the courts is facing a huge ambiguity. Now, speaking about jurisprudence, it's very much important to make you clear that we should have an idea, according to this research, about jurisprudence, because society law reflects the needs, expectations of the society. So, if laws doesn't reflect the society values and expectations, we cannot expect that to be an law. So it's very much important. Law should reflect the social values and social expectations. As simple terms, we are still governing by British frameworks, what was introduced by British and that not reflect the social values of our country. Objective of my research is to indicate and highlight the lacuna of existing labor laws, regime which is not compatible with the social expectations present context. My methodology is a highly technical presentation. It is related to the law. My methodology is a qualitative one, and compared to analysis methodologies used. And data collection was done by primary and secondary methods. Structured interview from legal professionals, HR managers, employees, employers, domestic and international statutes, judiciary decisions and arbitrary awards. Secondary data was used by law books, journals, research reports, and news articles. According to the research, it's very much important to make findings and conclusion. It's recommended that it finds that there are a huge gap between the laws and social expectations in our industrial field. For example, if you need to fire a person, employee, who is not performing well in your organization, you cannot do that. You have an issue on that. Because persons can be terminated for disciplinary action only. So if you need to fire a person not performing his job well for the expectation of company, you are restricted by our law to not to do that. And you can do that, but you have to show reasonable grounds. If that employee is sued against you, you should prove that reasonable case in the courts. And even some organizations are entering for the contract of employment without considering the supreme law of the country. Some people making agreements for to the employee, mentioning that you cannot have any trade union. It is restricted. Can you do that? It is violation of supreme law of the country. The constitution has guaranteed the trade union right, and from a contract it can't be restricted. So these all mixed jumble laws should be streamed and come to a one line without making an ambiguity and confusion in the industrial field as well as in the courts. As a finding and a conclusion, I would like to pay attention for the authorities of state parties, trade unions, especially employees federation, to think on this and make recommendations to enact new laws. What the social expectations are met. On that conclusion, On that recommendations, I will come to my presentation. And it's very important to have to embrace the change of HRM. I recommended that we should change the laws according to the expectations of people in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the findings on employee engagement. We will next have the findings presented on the gamification in human resource management by authors Ramakrishnan Vivek and Y. Nandagopan. Presented by Ramakrishnan Vivek.
Okay, today I would like to present my research presentation in CIPM institutions. I would like to thank him to conducting this kind of research symposium to encouraging the young academics. My topic is gamification in human resource management. Nowadays, due to this dynamic environment, there are new concepts are developing by the authors. Under that models, the gamification is one of the tools used by a lot of the people to motivate and achieving their objective in the organization. So, first of all, the gamification is the game thinking system. We have to use motivate the employees and increasing the employee performance. It's recently identified this concept by a lot of researchers, but there are less research on this field as in quantitative models. So I tried to develop the conceptual framework by using the existing sources. Before that, I'm going to give one brief introduction. Gamification has gained a lot of attention in the online world. That means the previous studies, there are people to attract the employees through the social medias and online sources. They're using the gamification as a technique to identify the highly potential peoples. And gamification is not about the virtually recreating the immersive experience. So when you listen these terms, the gamification, not only the game kind of fun things, we have to use that to increase the employee engagement through the organization. So once you do the oral type of training, most of the time not suitable for organization. But when you do some game kind of strategies, it will improve the attention through the organization. It's about using the game elements and mechanism to help organization to achieve employees' engagement and organization objective. So gamification has been discovered to work best organization practices such as recruitment, training, referral recruitment and development as well as wellness. So thus in HR, it's about designing HRM process, utilizing the ideas and best practices from the range of field. Is use kind of fun and motivation particular in the organization. So the research gap, so when you consider the corporate world, there are high level of turnover absenteeisms. At the same time, people are less motivated, frequently changing their jobs. So as an organization, they have the responsibility to make employee retention to organization. You need to make sure continuous sustainable employment opportunities in the organization. If there are people leaving the frequently, it will affect your performance. So the gamification is a tool ensuring to make high level of retention in the organization. Another one, according to the goal of research in 2012, the less than 10 employees are engaged in their jobs. That means remaining 60% employees are disengaged. So we need to use some mechanism to fill this performance gap. So gamification can help to overcome these issues. Next, the research question and objectives. The objective is to examine the effect of gamification in human resource management, to explore the relationship between the gamification and HR process, to determine the potential outcome of gamification. So when you come to the questions, what is the effect of gamification in human resource management? What is the relationship between the gamification and HR process? And what are the potential outcomes of gamification? So when you come to methodology, this research comes under the qualitative studies. So qualitative studies means we're going to use the in-depth studies through the non-numerical aspect. It's kind of under the phenomenology, interpretive approach, we have the qualitative studies. The qualitative studies, I use secondary method to collect the data. It will come phenomenology. Under phenomenology, we have used existing journals. So based on the existing journal, I developed this conceptual framework. So here approach is existing sources and secondary research. The research strategy is literature review. So I am going to use study literature review. So data collection, what I said earlier, secondary data through published 34 journals, 2014 to 2019. Based on that, I developed conceptual framework. So here literature review, the persons in 2000 studies hold that gamification is an innovation and innovation a technique, a system, at the same time, the rise to learning the components to attract the diversion and distributes in the peoples, and inside of the actions, the assignments, the message and situations is kind of non-amusement for the people perspective, acutes the transformational amusement life elements. So this means most of the times the governments, they are using game-oriented techniques to make the employees' motivation levels. And research suggests that gamification of training include use of points, measures, and rewards and challenge and narratives, and immersion can be used positively about learning outcomes. So when you come to the training part, so most of the organization, HR, they kind of adapt the corporate to use the game techniques to improve their performance. So this kind of this game thinking will change employees' mindset to keep motivate them. During that last 5 years ago, the interest of practitioners has spread the use of game application into different HR processes. Recently, more and more companies use different gaming technologies, thereby involving employees and changing their behavior. So once you use the game strategies, it will change behavior of employees. Those who are fed up with dissatisfaction, always money can't motivate. We need to use some non-monetary system also. So gamification is support to change their mindset. They actively involve their works. So HR function uses different gamification tools to improve induction process, employee trainings and developments, and team building, talent management process, and performance management. Gamification adds to your everyday duty, which otherwise can be quite boring. So most of the time, once we adopt some traditional methods in when we training the employees, it is kind of boring. So once you adopt in the game kind of techniques, it gives more knowledge and gaining the technical aspect for the employees. The elements of gamification can be applied to create sustainability mechanism for employee engagement. The benefit can be repeated on how extensively these elements are actually used in the workplace. The key element which similarly applied are clear goals, competitions and cooperation, team constraint, reward structure, feedback system, and kind of storytelling and activities and replace and achievements. The apply them to the work education context, it will increase the employee productivity, which will give the results of better results to organization performance. So based on the existing literatures, I developed this conceptual frameworks. Here the independent variable is come under the gamification in HRM. What are the functions? We have to use these gamification techniques, employee recruitment, selection and induction, and employee training and development, team building and talent performance management, and employees performance management. How this independent variable it affecting on dependent variable organization performance. Under the organization performance, we go into study employee learnings, employee engagement, employee satisfaction and productivity, and employee motivations. So by using this model, you can, this is a conceptual framework, it's qualitative model. So if you need to further study, you can test this as a quantitative model by developing operationalization and quantitative questionnaires. By issuing these questionnaires, you can come to the conclusion for these studies. This study only supporting the conceptual framework. So based on these studies, the conclusion and recommendation, gamification can be applied for employee recruitment, selection and induction. And mostly we can apply training and development, team building and talent management and performance management. It will actively increase your engagement towards organization and it will support to organization citizens' behavior to increase their performance as well. So we can use this model to identify what is the contribution they have to the organization. Ultimate results of the gamification is enhancing the organization performance through the employee satisfaction, productivity, motivation, and learning engagement. So it is to recommended to implement the gamification for enhancing the organization performance. So future researchers, they can use this model to test the organization. So suggestion for future researchers to expand the research and detect the greater number of variables. So until now we studied existing documents based on the qualitative statement. So you want to find what kind of numerical aspect and statistical package you can test this model for your future study. This is already, as I said earlier, this is secondary data collection. If you want to identify primary data, you can, by developing the operationalization questionnaires, you can test the primary data, so collecting the samples. To collect the data from research articles with great diversity in journal and country here. This means you can use this conceptual framework, different proxy. Different proxy means you can use this government, an academic institution, any kind of institution you can apply and test your requirements. So I use APA reference style. I hope you enjoyed this session. I will conclude my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the findings on gamification and its impact on human resources management. I believe those were all insightful findings which were presented at this forum. So the technical sessions will commence off with the findings presented on the symbiotic impact of trait and ability, emotional intelligence on life success, authored by Lalit Veragoda.
Everyone, good morning. Dr. Chandana Jayawardana, Chairperson, Research Symposium, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, President and Council members of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, and dear participants and my dear students. Thank you very much inviting me to impart my experience, my research experience in this kind of important forum. Today, I have selected one important research recently what I have completed to share with you. My research topic is symbiotic impact of the trade and ability emotional intelligence on life success. The relationship between emotion and cognition is still not clear. It is an intellectual puzzle. If I ask you a simple example, if I ask you to give rating for my session, if you give 10 marks, if I ask you what is the cognitive contribution and emotional contribution in order to give 10 marks, you don't have exact answer. This is the intellectual puzzle. However, in 1997, two researchers from Yale University, May and Salovi, have given first formal definition for the emotional intelligence, and they identified emotional intelligence as a set of interrelated abilities. As usual, this concept is highly criticized by a number of researchers, and consequently, Petridis and his team in 2003 defined emotional intelligence as a perception of a person's own emotional abilities. So these are the two schools of thought on emotional intelligence. And even now you can see in literature in emotional intelligence, these two parties are arguing the validity and reliability of these constructs. However, in this research, irrespective of this contemporary argument that AEI, ability emotional intelligence, is greater than trait emotional intelligence, we are arguing how both constructs contribute in enhancing life success. This requirement is identified by a number of researchers, and accordingly, the central research question of this study is how do individual and mutual impact of ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence influence on life success of the executives in private sector listed companies in Sri Lanka. the overall purpose is to examine the influence of the trait emotional intelligence and ability emotional intelligence from perceptual and cognitive point of view in explaining desired level of life success of the head of department in private sector. There are 4 specific objectives. The first objective was to assess the influence of the ability emotional intelligence on the level of life success of the executives in private sector organization in Sri Lanka. The second objective was to assess the influence of the trait emotional intelligence on the level of life success. And third objective, and third most important objective, is assess the mutual conducive impact of the ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence on the level of life success of the executives in private sector. The fourth objective is to investigate the impact of the individual character on the relationship between job performance and life success. This is the conceptual framework I propose for this research. This model is based on general system theory. There are 2 independent variables, ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence. Job performance is identified as a intervening variable, and individual character is identified as a moderating variable, and dependent variable, life success is identified as the dependent variable. And the population was head of departments who deployed in private sector organization Sri Lanka, and there are 334 listed companies in Sri Lanka, and unit of analysis was head of department who directly report to the managing director or chief executive officers of the respective department. So I have decided to get a quite large sample because I applied new models to analyze this data, 334 head of departments, and I use 6 instruments. There are 2 instruments already developed, and I developed 4 instruments to assess content domain of the variables and use AMOS to analyze this data. The findings, my first hypothesis was higher the ability emotional intelligence of the executive, higher will be the tendency to enhance life success. According to the structural equation model test developed to test the hypothesis, the effect of the ability emotional intelligence towards the life success is positive and significant at 5% level. Second hypothesis was the higher is the trait emotional intelligence of the executives, higher will be the tendency to enhance level of life success. So according to the structural equation model developed, effect of the TEI, trait emotional intelligence towards life success, is positive and significant at 5%. And third most important hypothesis was that the mutual impact of the ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence is greater than their individual impact of AEI and TEI in enhancing the level of life success. According to the model, 60% of the variance of the life success is explained by both predictor variables. This is one of the very important findings. And 29% of the life success is depend on whether head of department possess a strong character. And this graph explains the relationship between life success and job performance, and how moderator variable or individual character change the direction between life success and job performance. You can see, normally we expected that when job performance is increasing, head of department life success should be increased. But you can see here, a blue line, at one point onward, their life success is decreasing when increasing job performance. So this reflects the impact of the moderator variable, job performance, life success, individual character. The conclusions, the first findings are, the finding of this research are significant in terms of adding new knowledge to the literature in number of areas. Both ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence positively correlate with the life success. Second one is the mutual or aggregate impact of the ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence is significantly higher than their individual impact in explaining level of life success. And next one is the individual character significantly moderate the relationship between job performance and life success. And the findings have a major implication to consider the possibility of having hybrid concept of emotional intelligence, which include element of the both cognitive and perceptual domain. Because already empirically verified that ability emotional intelligence and trait emotional intelligence are two different constructs. I propose in this research consider possibilities of developing hybrid construct using these two models. This finding re-emphasized the need of the change in the contemporary direction of the maximum well-being. We are talking always maximum well-being, but this research proposed to consider not maximum, optimum well-being. And this research insight directly used to develop National Happiness Index for Sri Lanka. So I am working for that now. And there's no direct relationship between financial status with the, which derive mainly from job performance with the life success. This is very important for the private sector. If we think that once we increase the financial status, we can expect the better life, no, there are other variables. Rather, such relationship is significantly moderated by individual's strength of the character. Therefore, we need to program to develop strength of the individual character. Findings validate the applicability of the Aristotle moral codes for the contemporary business organization. This is also very important. We can see in the most of the organizations, this aspect is declining. Finally, the originally developed two instruments which has a good psychometric properties will be instrumental in adding new knowledge to the literature. So this is all about my research findings. And finally, I would like to thank you again giving this rare opportunity. And if you have anything gray, please contact me. I can help you to resolve. Thank you. Thank you very much. 9 seconds.
Thank you. Now we will be presenting the findings on the impact of telecommuting on individual employment decisions, perspective of Sri Lankan IT expatriates in Singapore, authored by Melanie Dayananda.
Hi everyone, hope all of you are doing well and safe. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity given me to present my paper at this forum. And I am Melanie Dayananda, and I'm currently working in Singapore as an academic. Let me share my presentation with y'all before I move into presenting my research work. So this is my topic, does telecommuting impact on individual employment decisions? It's a perspective of Sri Lankan IT expats in Singapore. This is the presentation structure that I have worked on. Let me introduce what is telecommuting. According to year 2012, improvement of telecommunicating technologies is allowing the employees to work remotely away from their office environment. So to make it more familiar for y'all, this is all about working from home using IT facilities. As y'all know, working from home, or rather telecommuting, is the most demanding and transformational change that organizations face with the pandemic situation today. If you look at the new normal, organizations as well as employees both are compelled to use IT in telecommuting, and there are a model of factors to consider when defining telework includes proportion. Proportion is all about whether you're doing work on part-time basis or full-time basis, and the location. Location is all about mobility of work. Schedule, we need a schedule. Why? Because there are employees who are working from different time zones and from different geographical locations. So we need collaboration, the virtual teams, and also they need to be having synchrony and autonomy. Also, the earlier research has proved that there's a positive impact on productivity, job satisfaction, and work-life balance by telecommuting factors. And also, when we are looking at individual employment decisions, there are factors that influence or that affect individuals' decision-making based on the salaries, incentives, and other benefits such as medical schemes. And also the research shows that work-life balance, personal well-being, and the opportunities for personal and professional development that one can have are some of the other factors in individual employment decisions. And few have also mentioned that company reputation is also a fact in the employment decision making. So with that, I would like to discuss why I have chosen this research area. If you look at the workplace today, the workplace diversity has been increased more than ever before. Why? Because there are so many generations whom work together for the same company goal. If you look at Singapore and Sri Lankan work context, in Singapore work context, there are a lot of generations at the workplace, starting from baby boomers to millennials. I would say in the Sri Lankan context, it's lesser. Why? Because if you look at the research data, the aging population of Singapore is higher than Sri Lanka for obvious reasons. And at the same time, if you see, telecommuting is varying based on the work characteristics and the personal characteristics. It has a direct impact on the employee task performance and the productivity. This is all proven by the earlier research, and telecommuting has trending ever since it was introduced in IT, because most of the employees, they seek flexible working hours and the opportunity for them to work from home in different situations. Autonomy and ability of job control has allowed these employees to have increased job satisfaction by telecommuting. And at the same time, it has been a tool where the organizations can influence the new generations to facilitate the workforce diversity in a much more productive manner. There's a personal reason why I have chosen this research area, because most of the IT professionals whom are in Singapore, those who are my friends, they consider these telecommuting opportunities when they are to make a decision, rather than only looking at the salary and other benefits such as personal development opportunities and so on. So with that, I would like to look at the justification of this study. Telecommuting spreads back to 1970s, but still it has been grown only from 2005 to 2015 by 115%, and 16% of total workforce is working from home in United States. And there are challenges and issues in terms of HRM, employment and operationalization, but still there's a trend towards moving people from day-to-day operations at a workplace to their home environment. And also there's a trend in the IT industry. Most of the IT professionals in the Sri Lankan employments, they seek employment opportunities in Singapore due to reasons like salary and the benefits and the work-life balance and so on. Why? Because the telecommuting is one of the major factors that the Singapore organizations are practicing at the moment. So based on the literature, we have set the main objective and the sub-objectives. The main objective is to identify the impact of telecommuting on individual employment decisions. And we have listed down the sub-objectives such as to identify the individual motivations of telecommuting, to identify the factors affecting employment decision, to measure how much work is completed when telecommuting, to identify how the obligations and distractions affect telecommuting, and finally, to identify how the organizational policies impact on telecommuting practices in Sri Lanka and Singapore. So this is the conceptual framework that I have developed based on the following research. So the factors that has a relationship to telecommuting has been taken as individual motivators, level of work completion, distractions and obligations, and the benefits. Hypothesis has been developed for each one of these areas, and the research methodology. Research methodology is a mix of qualitative and quantitative approaches, and I have used a random sampling technique and the convenience sampling for quantitative and qualitative approaches. For the data collection, I have used a survey and also interviews by using the convenience sampling. Ethical consideration was much important in the research. I have taken voluntary participation, and also informed consent has been taken. Confidentiality of the information directly and indirectly has been protected, and also all the participants are treated with anonymity. To analyze the data, descriptive statistics analysis, content and correlation analysis has been used with the hypothesis testing. So these are the findings that I have gathered through my research. For me to give you an insight to the profile of participants, if you look at the area of expertise, majority of the participants are from the software development background, which has 76.4%, and then the highest is from DevOps or the cloud computing, which is 9.1%, and then we have business analysts as the third category of highest area of expertise. And the position of the organization of these participants are mainly in operational level, and then the supervisory, and we have strategic level, the director level employees, as well as the managerial level employees, and their experiences in the industry counts as following. We have 38.2% participants whom are having 5 to 10 years of experience in total, and we have only about 1.8% of participants whom are having about 10 years of experience, and we have 32.7% employees whom are having 2 years, only 2 years of experience in the industry. And at the same time, I have taken the experience in Sri Lanka and Singapore also into consideration. So if you look at these figures, the total experience that they have in the industry has the experience in Singapore as well as in Sri Lanka. So these are the factors affect the employment decisions that are mentioned by the participants. So the key main factors includes work-life balance, the salary, and the opportunities for personal growth. And also, if you look at the flexible working hours and working from home, those are also having a considerable amount of percentage out of the factors. And this is to summarize the statistical analysis that I have had. The first factor is individual motivators of telecommuting. 70% or 71% of participants has said telecommuting is beneficial, and telecommuting becomes an individual motivator because of the reduced cost in terms of traveling, clothing, and lunching. And if you look at the Singapore context, the most highest expenditure would be lunching. And also, like if you look at the Sri Lankan context, the most like reduced time will be in terms of traveling. So it has a highest positive correlation, which is 0.914. And also 47.3% has mentioned that the individual motivation factor is productivity, again having a positive correlation of 0.789. And 43.6% has mentioned that personal commitments, and 41.8% has mentioned its job satisfaction. Hypothesis was tested, and it says that individual motivators of telecommuting has a confirmed relationship to the decision making. And when looking at the level of work completion in telecommuting, 74.6 are mentioning that they complete 75% of tasks, or more than 75% of daily tasks that are allocated to them, and 29.1% mentions that it's 100% or above. Hypothesis test says that it's a non-significant variable to the job selection, and distractions and obligations of telecommuting has also given us a figure of non-significant variable to the decision making. And they say that most of the distractions and obligations are from family commitments and social media and personal interests, which has a negative correlation with a value of 0.387. And benefits of telecommuting, 92%, 7% says work-life balance is the highest benefit that they can have, with a positive correlation of 0.845. And also 90.9% says that it's salary, positive correlation of 826. And also opportunities for development and flexible working hours has been considered as positive benefits in telecommuting for these participants. It has a significant variable to decision making once the hypothesis test was done. Now we can move on to the summary of the statistical analysis. It says individual motivators of telecommuting and benefits of telecommuting were significant variables with positive correlations. But if you look at the level of work completion and the distractions of telecommuting, it has given a non-significant variable with rejected hypothesis and negative correlation for some of the factors. And when looking at the qualitative approach, the summary of content analysis can be taken as per the following. The salary, work-life balance, and opportunities for personal development has been considered as the three main factors in employment decision. And the least important factor has been company reputation. And if you look at the key motivation for them to telecommuting is reduced time and the cost for traveling, personal commitments, and facilitation for virtual operations. So when I was interviewing, like some of the participants have mentioned that they would rather prefer to go and work than handling the household chores or giving the attention to the kids. But most of the participants have mentioned that it is the other way around. They prefer to stay at home where they can give more time to the family and the kids, and also they can look into their personal commitments such as their health and also continuing their higher education, etc. And the most vulnerable issue that we have identified through focus groups and the interviews has been connectivity, speed, and the personal IT facilities that are available in Sri Lanka. Most of the participants have mentioned that it's very much easier to work from home when in Singapore than in Sri Lanka due to the connectivity and internet facilities that are available across the country in Sri Lanka. So to conclude, reflection on work characteristics and HR policies, participants have mentioned that organizations are practicing telecommuting in Singapore, and surprisingly, organizations lack HR policies related to telecommuting, and the figure is 65.4% of participants. And also 42.6% have mentioned organizations allow telecommuting in Sri Lanka, but that has been in a rare consideration. Some of the IT organizations, of course, they provide telecommuting facilities, but not on everyday basis. Maybe based on the requirement, based on the situation, they allow them to work from home. And 73.6% participants have mentioned Sri Lankan organizations do not have HR policies related to telecommuting. Since this is a platform for HR professionals, you all must be aware of this fact. They say that there are no HR policies that are related to telecommuting in Sri Lankan IT or the other organizations. To summarize, impact on the employment decision was identified as positive, yet still telecommuting was not identified as a preliminary requirement in decision making. To conclude, this research was conducted before the pandemic arose. This was done before the COVID situation, and the research can be totally changed because of the new normal, and there can be opportunities for future research. So when looking at the research data that are being published here, says that which industry is best geared towards remote working due to the pandemic has been software and IT, finance, media, and commerce. But I would say education is also a part of most gearing industries towards remote working right now. And also workers prefer being digitally present, and it's 68% whom are willing to take a 10% pay cut to work from home. So as I said, this was done in the pre-COVID situation, and we can have post research on the post-COVID situation also. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the findings on telecommuting and its impact on employment decisions. Now we will have the findings presented on high-performance work practices and employee job performance, mediating effect of employee engagement by authors Manoj Kapitipola, Anuradha Iddagoda, and H.B. Stanreka, presented by Manoj Kapitipola and Anuradha Iddagoda.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Anuradha Iddagoda. The title of our research paper is High Performance Work Practices and Employee Job Performance, the Mediating Effect of Employee Engagement. The first author is Group Captain Manoj Kapitipola, second author is myself, and third author is Dr. Helena Stanreka. Let me briefly tell the sequence of this presentation. First, I'm going to talk about the research facts, then the research objectives, conceptual framework, and the rationale for conceptual framework, research design, decision regarding the hypothesis, bridging the research gaps, and last but not least, the implications of the study. We all know that employee engagement is the employee's head, heart, and hand involvement for his or her job as well as for his or her organization. And employee engagement, now it has become a buzzword in the management circles. The reason is the outcomes of the employee engagement. They are employee job performance and organizational financial performance according to Anita 2014 as well as Hart et al. 2002. And there are so many drivers of employee engagement identified by several researchers. And we have selected one driver, that is high performance work practices, which brings competitive advantages for the organization. Actually, that is a finding of Arachige and Robertson in 2015. So there are two research gaps we are going to bridge in this study. First one is there is no empirical evidence on the linkage between high performance work practices and employee engagement in the Sri Lankan context, perhaps in the international context. Then the second research gap, actually, it's about the mediating effect of employee engagement. There's no empirical evidence about the mediating effect of employee engagement on the relationship between high performance work practices and employee engagement in the Sri Lankan context as well as in the international context. So there are 4 research objectives for this study. Due to the time constraint, I'm going to read the first research objective for you. That is to identify the level of high performance work practices, employee engagement, job performance as perceived by the managerial employees in the public listed bank in Sri Lanka. When it comes to theories, what we believe is one theory alone is very hard to explain the complex relationships between nomological networks or the conceptual framework. Therefore, we use three theories for this study. General systems theory is the main theory, justice theory, and the signaling theory are the other theories. Let me briefly tell you the theoretical assertions about the general systems theory with regard for this study. Wright and Snell, the two authors in 1991, they identified there are three components for the general systems theory, that is inputs, process, and outputs. According to Wright and Snell, skill is an input, and we have identified extensive training. We have identified extensive training as a high performance work practices. Through the extensive training, an employee enhance or brush up not only the knowledge and aptitude, but also the skills. Therefore, high performance work practices become an input. Then the researchers like Messi and Snyder in 2009, then Inauguration et al. 2016, they identified employee engagement is a combination of attitude and behavior. In a behavior, there are some sort of activities, actions. So employee engagement become a process. Then obviously the employee job performance is the output. And let's move to the conceptual framework. There are three variables in the conceptual framework, that is high performance work practices, employee engagement, and employee job performance. Through the theoretical assertions, that is general systems theory, signaling theory, and justice theory, as well as through the literature evidence, conceptual and empirical evidence, we have derived three hypotheses. And I am going to read the first hypothesis for you, that is high performance work practices is positively related with employee engagement. An author called Sekar, a famous author called Sekar in 2003, identified 6 components of research design. Based on these 6 components, we are going to explain the research design of our study. Let me first tell you what are the 6 components of research design identified by Sekar. First one is purpose of the study setting, type of investigation, time horizon of the study, extent of the researcher interference with the study, and unit of analysis. And when it comes to our study, the purpose of the study is hypothesis testing, and extent of the researcher interference with the study, minimum. Type of investigation, this is a correlational study. Unit of analysis, obviously this is individual because we gather data from the managerial employees from the public listed banks in Sri Lanka. Then study setting is non-controlled, and the time horizon of the study is cross-sectional. And the sample size is 135 for this study, and we decided the sample size is a healthy number based on the Roscoe's rule. He said minimum sample should be 30 and the maximum sample should be 500. And the sampling method is convenient, and we gather data through self-directed questionnaires, and measurement scale is Likert scale, and rating scale is 5-point as well as, and we use the statistical package SPSS. And to continue from this point, I invite a group captain, Manoj Kapeti.
Thank you, Dr. Anuradha. Let me continue from that. So our first gap, there's no empirical evidence which indicates the linkage between the employee engagement and high performance work practices. So it reveals that the impact of high performance work practices on employee engagement has not been empirically tested in Sri Lankan context, but probably in the international context. And then, so the logical flow of the major research aspects, the gap, right? So we looked at how to identify the high performance work practices significantly affect on the employee engagement. And the research question, are high performance work practices significantly affect the employee engagement? And hypothesis one, high performance work practices is positively related with employee engagement, and we used a bivariate correlation. So if I recall you first hypothesis, high performance work practices is positively related with employee engagement. The correlation for high performance work practices and employee engagement. And we found out that the relationship between high performance work practices and employee engagement is significant. So the hypothesis one is accepted. Based on that, we derived that there's a significant relationship between high performance work practices and employee engagement, which is prevalent. When we look at gap 2, unavailability of empirical evidence with regard to the mediating effect of employee engagement on the relationships between high performance work practices and employee job performance in the Sri Lankan context, as well as in the international context, is an important research gap in the literature of employee engagement. So the research objective 4 we looked at is to identify whether the employee engagement significantly mediate the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance. The research question we looked at is employee engagement significantly mediate the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance? The hypothesis being employee engagement has a significant mediating effect on the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance. We used a multiple regression analysis. Hypothesis 2 being employee engagement has a significant and positive effect on employee job performance. We look at the statistics. It says the relationship between employee and employee engagement is significant, being such the hypothesis 2 was accepted. When it comes to hypothesis 3, the employee engagement has a significant mediating effect on the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance. For this, we used the method developed by Fraser et al. In 2004 to test the mediating effect. For that, we used the relationship between the outcome and the predictor. Yeah, and we looked at the relationship between the predictor outcome when the mediator is in between. So the testing steps in mediator model, testing step 1, part C, if you recall the previous illustration that I used, outcome is job performance, the predictor is high performance work practices. Testing step 2, path A is the mediator, that is the employee engagement. The predictor is high performance work practices. And in the previous one is the beta value, it's 0.05, and here in the path A, it's 0.47. Testing step 3 and 4, paths B and C. The outcome is job performance, the mediator is employee engagement. And the value in between was 0.078. So the high performance work practices, the relationship was 0.109. Now the significance 0.239. Our third hypothesis was employee engagement has a significant mediating effect on the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance. The study stipulates that the employee engagement variable mediates the relationship between high performance work practices and employee job performance. So consequently, the significant relationship between high performance work practices and employee engagement was seen. So by looking at these findings, bridging the gap 2 and 3, the researchers derived that a significant mediating effect prevails between the employee engagement and employee job performance. Let me look at the managerial implications of the study. So in order to enhance the level of employee engagement, the findings imply that high performance work practices need to be used appropriately in the industry. So organizations should give attention to the bundle of high performance work practices. Let me take one by one. When it comes to an organization, the organization should have a realistic job purview. And then the organization's, realistic job preview. Then also we should look at the pay for performance. So you should always look at the performance and you should pay it with commensurate with their performances. And then the organization should look at the attitude surveys, because staff attitude is always important because that determines how they perform. And next aspect is self-directed teams. So organizations must always look at self-directed teams and they should be given enough autonomy to perform their task. By that, they will be performing to the best. And also it's very important the organization look at the regular appraisals, because people need to be appraised, people need to be seen, people need to be looked at how they are performing their task. Not only the appraisal, only the performance. The people need to be subjected to extensive training, because it's very important to train people to continue their work, and also they should be ready to continue their work, and not forgetting the symbolic egalitarianism. Thirdly, the endeavors which take to enhance the level of employee engagement ultimately lead to a higher level of employee job performance. And this brings to the end of our presentation, and we are open for any questions, if any.
Thank you for the findings on high performance work practices and employee job performance. Now, we will have the findings presented on the impact of employees' emotional intelligence on job performance of public and private banks in Colombo, a comparative study by authors Shiraz Nilam and Ranita Veeraratna, presented by Shiraz Nilam.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shiraz Nilam. I'm a PTHR student from batch 233. Before I start my presentation, I would like to ask you a small question. What will be your emotions and thoughts while you are traveling to your work if you meet with an unexpected incident? Such as, if you are traveling with your personal vehicle, somebody knocks your vehicle and dies. Or else you are receiving a call from your colleague mentioning that you have been promoted. Or else you are receiving an email mentioning that you have successfully conducted and successfully completed your PQHR program. So, in some situations you will be joyful, in some situations you will be sad. But during the course of the day, while you are working, those emotions will really impact your day-to-day work performance. So, from that point, I would like to take introduction to my topic, the impact of employees' emotional intelligence on job performance of private and public banks in Colombo district, Sri Lanka. Okay, this is my outline, the introduction, research gap, objectives, conceptual framework, methodology, and the findings. The background of the study. If we talk about the Sri Lankan banking history, before 1825, there were no financial institutions in Sri Lanka. The first financial institution established in Sri Lanka was 1828. We call it Kiris and Kiris Company. It was established in Kent, basically to settle the coffee era transactions. In 1949 and 1950 period, John Exter prepared a report and established the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And after that, in 1961, People's Bank established. 1969, Commercial Bank established. Likewise, bank has been established now. But the current situation, there are 24 licensed commercial banks and 10 specialized banks in Sri Lanka. When we take the Colombo district, most dynamic district of the country, there are 638 banking institutions, the branch network established through Sri Lanka. So, as we all know, the banking institutions are widely exposed in service providing sector. So, therefore, the banks are trying to take the human resource as the competitive advantage over their competitors. When we think about the Sri Lankan banking industry, before 1977, before the open economy comes to Sri Lanka, there are a few transactions like savings deposit, loans, transfer payments, and money transfers. But after 1977, the banking industry exponentially has been grown. Domestic banking, corporate banking, the financial services, international transaction, it is with the technological and the geographical expansion, with the globalization, it has been rapidly changed. Therefore, the emotional intelligence of the people and how it effectively helps towards the customers, we are going to clarify in the next slide. Okay, the emotional intelligence and the job performance have been researched a lot in Western countries, but there is a positive relationship between emotional intelligence and the job performance, as well as a negative or inconsistent relationship with emotional intelligence and job performance as well. Okay, that derived us to have a research gap. What is the research gap? There are a lot of research studies have been conducted in Western countries to establish theoretical link between emotional intelligence and the job performance, but very much literature can be found out in Sri Lankan contexts. Number two, the research studies have been in different countries may have positive or negative relationship. So the findings of one country may prove to be insignificant to another country too, because of the culture, religious background, and the working environment and the technology. In this context, the banking institution or the bank management would love to know what is their emotional intelligence of their employees and how it impact and how it affect on their employee performance as well in such a dynamic competitive environment. So that derives the research problem. Research problem of this research is there is an impact of employees' emotional intelligence on job performance of banking employees in private and public commercial banks in Colombo district, Sri Lanka. Objective of the study. Main objective of the study is to investigate the impact of emotional intelligence on employee job performance in private and public banks in Colombo district, Sri Lanka. And secondary objectives are identify whether there is a gap, there is a difference between public sector employees on emotional intelligence and performance, private sector employees emotional intelligence and performance. Then the demographic factors, are there any differences? Finally, the gap between the emotional intelligence and employee performance on private and public banks in Sri Lanka. The research methodology. The researcher conducted this research at a field survey. The questionnaire derived from the existing literature and given to the respondents and correct the responses. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, to end of 2019, there are approximately 1,276 employees in Colombo district who are executive or above executive level. According to the Anderson table, the minimum number of samples the research has to be correct 295 to generalize this findings. And the researcher has been distributed 400 questionnaires. Out of that, 342 questionnaires have been written. The response rate of 85.5. The researcher has analyzed descriptive statistics, correlation, and regression analysis to predictive analysis. Okay, this is the most important thing, the conceptual framework of the study. Emotional intelligence and the job performance. When we talk about the emotional intelligence, it has 4 quadrants. First, the self-awareness, awareness of yourself. Then the self-management, how do you manage your emotions and do the work? And the social awareness, how do you manage, how do you feel about among others, your colleagues in your organization? And the relationship management, very important. How do you maintain the relationship management with your clients as well as the top management, external stakeholders or the internal stakeholders? Therefore, this is the emotional intelligence for quadrants. Its effects on the job performance of the individuals. Okay, according to the data gathered, they have run a reliability analysis. Reliability analysis measures from the contributive alpha. Contributive alpha items should be above 0.7%. All the items are validated above 0.7%. Then the test of normality, whether the data set is normally distributed, skewness and pictures value are according to the table, and scientific research must conclude the Z value plus or minus 2%. But since this is a social science research, the Z value can be variance with plus or minus 3.29. This sample contains a sample of 342, so therefore the levels are okay. And the p-value contains about 0.05, p-value is about 0.5. Okay, this is the sample profile. The sample profile contains male 49.7%, male female 50.3%, and the bank type 49.9% is public bank, 50.9% is private bank. So this is basically the sample profile. Okay, now the most important key findings of the research. Now you can see the emotional intelligence and the level of education. This is the most important thing. Now, research has found that emotional intelligence and job performance increase simultaneously while the education level is increased. Now you can see in this first graph the emotional intelligence level. The lowest emotional intelligence level is 4.1 contained by the bank employees who is entering to the arena with basic qualifications of O-level. But when we see the highest level, 4.27, holds the master's degree holder. So it means gradually from O-level, A-level, diploma, degree, postgraduate, and the master's, according to their education level increase, the emotional intelligence level also increase. Simultaneously, it applies for the job performance as well. You can see the job performance. When you talk about the job performance, 3.7 is the O-level education job performance level, and the master's degree performance really well in job performance is 4.4%. Okay, the next key finding, emotional intelligence and the age group. Now you can see in this diagram, first diagram, emotional intelligence, age categories, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. According to their knowledge that they acquire and the experience through their gathering experience, emotional intelligence ranges from 20s to 50s. You can say in mid-20s, they 3.9, 4.1, then again, final, the above highest grade is 4.1%. But it also simultaneously increases. But when you come to job performance and the age group, there is a slight difference. age between 20s, 13, 40s up to 50, there is an increase, but slight drop you can see in final age group above 50, but still it is accepted because if the mean value is above 4, maybe they are getting older, getting closer to retirement, there might be slight difference. Okay, this is the demographic variances, gender differences on emotional intelligence and the job performance. Now you can see the male. Male mean values for the emotional intelligence is 4.1. Female value for the emotional intelligence mean value is 4.03. Highly, the male having more emotional intelligence value when comparing with women. And the job performance across the gender, male mean value 4.3 and the female mean value 4.2. It means in both instances, emotional intelligence and the job performance, male outperform female and performing well. Okay, the findings. Objective 1. As I mentioned earlier in the first objective, main objective is to investigate what the impact of emotional intelligence on their job performance. Now, this overall module, total module summary, how employees' emotional intelligence hits on their job performance. 60%, the module contains 60%. There is a relationship between emotional intelligence on their employee job performance. Now, the second objective is to whether there is a difference between impact level of private banks and the public sector. Yes, there is a difference. When you take the module summary separate to institution, you can see impact of employees' emotional intelligence on the job performance of private banks in Colombo district, 66.6%. But when it comes to the public banks in Colombo, 53.4%. Yes, there is a difference between emotional intelligence on job performance according to the banks, private and the public. Private banks outperform. Okay, the final objective is to identify whether there is a gap between emotional intelligence and the job performance in private and public banks institutions around the district. Yes, when you can see the emotional intelligence quadrant, private bank perform well in the public bank perform well in the emotional intelligence quadrant and private bank perform below in the emotional intelligence quadrant. But when it comes to performance, the private bank perform well in the performance quadrant and public banks well bit below in the performance quadrant. So it means there is a difference between performance and emotional intelligence, private and public banking institution. And based on this finding, we can recommend the banking organization has to develop or has to hire an external trainer to develop the emotional intelligence of their banking employees. So it will lead to higher performance. And another point, ensuring that emotional intelligence testing to have it on the recruitment process. Then at the first instance, they can recruit the good employees for the performance. And as a conclusion, the research can tell there is a strong positive relationship between emotional intelligence and job performance in banking employees in the Colombo district. So therefore, the bank should emotionally intelligent employees and recruit them because it will have a direct impact on their banking performance. These are the references. Thank you.
Thank you for the findings on emotional intelligence and its positive impact on employee performance. We now have our final presentation on the preliminary findings of a study undertaken by the Applied Research Committee of CIPM on the factors contributing to women's career progression in Sri Lankan banking sector by authors Heather Fernando and Lakmini Rajapaksha.
Hello everyone. We are happy to present the first ever CIPM Applied Research paper done by CIPM Applied Research Center. I believe today is a milestone of research in Sri Lanka and CIPM. We are focusing to drive a research-based human resource management culture. I would like to thank our immediate past president, Mr. Dhammika Fernando, our newly appointed CIPM president, Mr. Jayanta Amarasinghe, and our committee chair, Dr. Chandana Jayawardana, and team for all the support and guidance provided. Our research topic is a study on factors contributing for women career progression of banks in Sri Lanka. Our research topics are Chapter 1, Introduction, Chapter 2, Literature Review, Chapter 3, Research Methodology, Chapter 4, Analysis, Chapter 5, Conclusion and Recommendations. When we come to the introduction, the most significant features in the global labor market in the last half and 20th century is the increase in participation of women in paid labor force. It was also noted that last 2 decades in the global labor market, there has been an increase in the participation of women at lower and middle level management positions. Women movements, policies of the political system and corporate equal opportunity initiatives. However, according to Maser and Fletcher 2002, cited in Woodwell and Jayawardena 2019, women in the labor force at the highest level in business are still rare. It is also observed that millennials switch between employers for quality jobs and for better benefits packages where employers could pose many challenges in retaining the top talent if organizations do not adopt the gender inclusive policies. According to IFC 2019. According to Gosso et al. 2017, argued that the organizations make initiatives that entrust with succession planning, mentorships, networking, and directorships to enhance a flexible, true work-life policies to be an inclusive culture to every employee. Background of the study. In December 2019, Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced 6 banks as systematically important banks in Sri Lanka. Such 6 banks that exceeded a leverage exposure measures of 400 million rupees as defined under Basel rules to categorize under this framework. Therefore, this study is limited to such 6 banks for the study purpose. The 6 banks as follows. Bank of Ceylon, People's Bank, Sampat Bank PLC, Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC, Hatton National Bank PLC, Ceylon Bank PLC. This study has been carried out to determine the factors contributing women career progression at systematically important banks in Sri Lanka and to examine the perception of executive staff who are attached to those banks with regard to the career progression of women in bank in Sri Lanka. According to our research, we found the women participation of these banks as follows. Ceylon Bank around 7%, Bank of Ceylon 7%, Commercial Bank 17%, People's Bank 46%, Hatton National Bank 12%, Sampat Bank 16% and Ceylon Bank 27%. According to our research, we define our problem statement as follows. The survey of Institute of Leadership and Management made a clear evidence with regard to barriers that slowing down the women participation in banking where employees of 48 and 36 male respondents agreed that there are barriers except for women career progression, ILM 2009. The Works Knowledge Report of IFS 2019 stressed that identification of factors are important to implement policies and practices that would help enhance the gender inclusiveness. The study conducted by Jayawardena and Woodwell 2018 at Non-State Bank in Colombo district highlight that some of the organizational factors may negatively affect the women's career progression. The information gathered from the annual report of 2019 of systematically important banks in Sri Lanka also recorded a very low representation in the corporate management level in most of the banks. The research gap, the justification of the study, the dearth of business research related to the factors contributing women career progression is identified as a specific business research gap to examine how the internal business structures, corporate practices, job-related characteristics make an impact in the career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. In addition to that of academic research related to the factors contributed to women career progression in bank in Sri Lanka also is identified as a specific knowledge gap in local academia to examine how the internal business structure, corporate practices and job-related characteristics make an impact the progress of women in banking in Sri Lanka. The objective, general objective of our research is the general is of the study is to investigate the perception of the bank executive on the factors that are contributing women career progression as systematically important banks in Sri Lanka. The specific objective of the research are to examine how internal business structure impact on career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. Number 2, to evaluate the corporate practices and its impact towards the career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. Number 3, to investigate how job-related characteristics impact on career progression of women in bank in Sri Lanka. Our research questions were how the internal business structures make an impact on career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. Number 2, what type of corporate practices that contribute to career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. Number 3, what is the level of job-related characteristic and impact on career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. The significance of the study. The results of this study will be useful to banks in Sri Lanka to revisit the policies and practices with relate to career progression of women in banks in Sri Lanka. For human resource practitioners, the HR practitioners will understand how important to investigate and develop women in banking to take up the key position in the bank in future to maintain the inclusiveness and gender equity. Policymakers, the finding of this study outcome would be much valuable to craft the human resource practitioners and human resource policies to develop the career progression of women in bank in Sri Lanka. Other researchers will find this study as a useful guide and it would help them to extend more discussion on career progression of women in Sri Lanka. So I would like to hand over the presentations to Ms. Heather Fernando to continue.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I would take you on to the drive with the methodology, whereas the research approach that we have found, the deductive methods, research paradigm is a positive paradigm, and research method, a survey method. Justification for survey method, it is relatively less expensive. Survey method is useful to describe large populations and easy to administer, and respondents are free to express their understanding. The type of data that we use for this study was primary data and study population in banks in Sri Lanka. The sample frame is systematically important banks in Sri Lanka declared by Central Bank Sri Lanka December 2019. The banks were Bank of Ceylon, Commercial Bank, People's Bank, HNB, Sampath Bank, and Ceylon Bank. The unit of analysis is executives of all grades at systematically important banks in Sri Lanka. The time horizon is the cross-sectional, and the sample size, a sample of 100 responses were taken into measurement and found that only 92 responses were valid for the measurement purposes, whereas the instrument was the questionnaire. The sample technique is the convenient sampling method. For the justification for sampling method of convenient sampling is the banks are not sharing their employee databases whatsoever. The study was designed with convenient sampling method. Pereira 2015 also stated that Sri Lankan banks withheld sharing information of databases with regard to their workforce. Dharmaratna 2014 in her study too stated that the banking laws do not permit the individuals to conduct studies in the bank sector as the databases are not sharing. However, the representatives of this sample is adequate to derive the factors relating to higher performance of career progression of women banking. Whereas the data collection, online, emails and physical collection, data coding, numeric, data analysis, descriptive analysis, bivariate and multivariate, and statistical techniques and data analysis is done with SPSS version 21, and justification to use the SPSS version 21 is SPS is capable of handling large amounts of data which can perform all other analyses covered in the text. The conceptual framework is designed with independent and dependent variables. The independent variables are internal business structures. Number 2 is corporate practices. Number 3 is job-related characteristics. This conceptual framework was adapted with the studies done by Bazo et al. 2017, Jayawardena and Jivani 2015, and Nizokea 2013. The hypothesis were there is a relationship between internal business structures and women career progression. Hypothesis number 2 is there is a relationship between corporate practices and women career progression. Number 3 hypothesis is there is a relationship between job-related characteristics and women career progression. The findings, the analysis and the findings are, we have measured the contract alpha and we found the internal business structure construct with 0.826 values, and corporate practices recorded 0.736, and job-related characteristics recorded 0.814, and women career progression recorded contract alpha values of 0.715. And we carried out the total statistics to find whether the contract alpha, if item deleted values and all the values represented more than 0.7 values. Whereas we carried out the correlation measurements, whereas internal business structures and women career progression had a positive relationship of 0.039, that is the R value is 39% with a significance value less than 0.005. The corporate practices and women career progression correlation registered a positive relationship of 0.418 with a significance value of less than 0.005. Job-related characteristics and women career progression recorded a positive relationship of 0.566 with a significance value of less than 0.005. 0.005. We carried out the regression measurements, and the model summary represented the simple R value of 0.714, which stood at 71%, whereas the adjusted R square values recorded 0.493, which is showing the positive variance of 49% by the internal business structures, corporate practices, and job-related characteristics to the outcome. And ANOVA tables represented the F values with 30.551 with a significance value of 0.000. Whereas the coefficient table recorded the standardized coefficient beta values with a positive regression of 28%, 25%, and 51% on internal business structures, corporate practices, and job-related characteristics, respectively, towards the outcome. The major finding of this study is the main objective is to find the perception of the bank executives on the factors that are contributing to women career progression at systematically important banks in Sri Lanka, whereas the conceptual framework was achieved. Specific objective is, number one, is to be examine how internal business structures impact on career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka, whereas the first hypothesis is achieved. The specific objective of number two is to evaluate the corporate practices and its impact towards the career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka, whereas the hypothesis number two is linked to it and the hypothesis number two is achieved. The specific objective of number three is to investigate how job-related characteristics impact on career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka, whereas the hypothesis number three was achieved. Whereas there were three hypotheses written on this particular study, where all three hypotheses were achieved with the study results. Discussion and conclusion. The correlation value between internal business structures and women career progression recorded a positive relationship of 0.390 with a significant p-value less than 0.005. This shows that measures are showing the positive relationship between internal business structures and women career progression. Corporate practices and women career progression registered a positive relationship of 0.418 with a significance p-value less than 0.005. This also shows a positive relationship between corporate practices and women career progression. The job-related characteristics and women career progression recorded a positive relationship of 0.566 with a significant p-value less than 0.005. This shows a positive relationship between job-related characteristics and women career progression. Discussion and recommendation. Standardized coefficient enable comparison of relative contributions when the variables are given in different measurements. Beta express the relative importance of each independent variable in standardized items. The standardized B values denoted a positive regression of 28%, 25%, and 51% on internal business structures, corporate practices, and job-related characteristics, respectively, to the outcome. The independent variables such as internal business structures, corporate practices, and job-related characteristics make a positive impact on women career progression, and therefore it is highly recommended that, number one, to revisit and redesign the internal business structures and to adjust the structures that would accommodate more gender equity in corporate management level. Number two is to enhance human resource policies and revisit to enhance the gender equity and inclusiveness for the career progression of women in banking in Sri Lanka. Number three recommendation is the banks should make arrangements to invest and groom women to develop their job-related characteristics to take up higher key positions. The limitation of the study, this study is carried out with its own limitations, as commonly the empirical studies are subject to much limitations that may need to be addressed in a future research using a bigger sample. Dharmaratna 2004 also in her study stated that the banking laws in Sri Lanka do not permit the individuals to obtain employee databases. Therefore, this study conducted using the convenient sampling method. The direction for future studies, the study engaged in convenient sampling technique due to the unavailability of databases of executive data. Therefore, if it is possible to run a future study with stratified sampling method. Number two, for the directions, future work may be extended to the other service sector organizations too, mainly to the hospitality industry in Sri Lanka, as there is a massive expectation for expanding the industry to create economic values. Also, we find very low female participation in the top level executives in the hospitality trade in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you for the findings on the factors contributing to career progression for women, conducted by the Applied Research Committee of CIPM. We thank each and every one of the speakers for the hard work, dedication, and commitment rendered for the symposium. And I'm sure we all gathered a lot of knowledge from today's session. And I'm sure it will help many industries in Sri Lanka. As we conclude with the technical sessions, we'll be moving on to, as I said, the most awaited session, which will be the plenary sessions moderated by the symposium chair, Dr. Chandana Jayawardena. The panel discussion will be on the impact of HR strategies and practices on the success of Sri Lankan organizations. The industrial experts who will be joining this session from reputed Sri Lankan organizations will be namely Mr. Sunil Disanayaka, Chief Executive Officer of EMICH, Ms. Krishanti Lokohetti, Chief HR Officer of Sampath Bank, Mr. Sarath Kumara, HR Director of Camso Lodestar, Mr. Sujit Jayasekara, General Manager of Brandix, and finally, Mr. Jayanta Jayaratna. And as I mentioned, the discussion will be moderated by Dr. Chandana Jayawardana.